Chapter 610. The military helicopter hovered in the air, and the dazzling spotlights illuminated the road area. After Kyle appeared, the soldiers and police officers who surrounded the scene and aimed their guns at Dong Bing and the others subconsciously put down their guns without listening to orders. They dared to threaten Dong Bing, Captain America, and even the King of Wakanda with their guns, but they didn't dare to point their guns at Kale. After all, the consequences related to it had already been written in the history books. General Kale. Rhodes took off his steel helmet and took the initiative to salute Kale. The soldiers and policemen behind him saluted in unison. The originally tense atmosphere was immediately reversed by one person's aura. Kale waved his hand and reminded, "I'm not a general anymore, and I'm not a citizen of the United States anymore." Rhodes said sincerely, "In my heart, you will always be the greatest general in history." "In that case." Kale shrugged and pointed at Dong Bing and the others. "Then give me face. I'll take the three of them away now. Is that okay?" As soon as this sentence came out, Baki, Chara and Steve were stunned. Rhodes' tanned face showed a difficult expression. He hesitated and said, "General Kale, if it's anything else I'll definitely agree. But now this matter is very big. Not only the United States, but countries all over the world are paying attention to the aftermath of this matter." "So, my face doesn't work?" Kale was expressionless. A powerful pressure spread out, forcing the soldiers and policemen to take a few steps back. "General Kale, please wait a moment. This matter is very important. It's not something I can decide. I need to make a few phone calls." Rhodes was a little embarrassed. Cold sweat appeared on his forehead. He shrank back and put on the steel helmet that was connected to the radio again. "Go ahead." Kale nodded. Rhodes took a few steps back and made a satellite phone call with his back facing them. Steve relaxed, looked at Kale and asked, "Kale, why are you here?" Kale looked at him unhappily and said, "Half an hour ago. Natasha called me and said that Baki was involved. She didn't know what you would do." "Thanks." Steve lowered his head. He knew that he had acted rashly today, unlike his usual calm and wise self, but he didn't regret it at all. In his opinion, heroes had to follow their hearts freely. They had to believe and insist that what they were doing was right. Even if they were going against the world, even if they only had the support of a few people, only then could they truly lend a helping hand to justice. Captain America Steve pursues freedom and heroism, while Iron Man Tony has compromised with the world because of what happened some time ago. This is also the current split view of the Avengers. Go. Baki looked at Kale and called out softly. "Looks like you've almost recovered," Kale said in surprise. "Not really." Baki shook his head and stopped talking. "Mr. Kale." T'Challa summoned up his courage, clenched his fists and questioned Kale's approach. "You're highly respected. You shouldn't get involved in this matter." He glanced at Baki and continued, "He killed my father. He must be punished by the law. Captain America sheltered him to escape, so he must also be punished by the law." "T'Challa, right?" Kale pondered and asked him, "Is your current private action, chasing the suspect on the road regardless of the car, also within the scope of the law?" T'Challa was suddenly speechless. Indeed, his current personal action was considered a violation of the local law and order. Kale said meaningfully, "Let's talk about it again. You said that Baki killed your father. Did you see Baki do it with your own eyes?" T'Challa was about to open his mouth but soon stopped, his pupils contracted slightly. Right, he indeed didn't see Baki do it. He only saw Baki appear at the scene, and then connected with Baki's identity and crime, he tacitly agreed that the other party was the one who killed his father. "I didn't kill your father," Baki said hoarsely. T'Challa's brows tightened. After a moment of silence, he stared at Kale and said, "You said that because you know the two of them. That's why you're standing on their side." Kale smiled. "It seems that your father didn't mention me to you. You know my father?" T'Challa's eyes widened in disbelief. How come he hadn't heard of it? "Not only that," Kale pondered. "Is there a door in the basement of your country's palace?" "Door?" T'Challa was stunned. He quickly recalled. Indeed, there was a door in the basement of the Wakanda palace that had been sealed for a long time. Every time he asked, his father would fall into reminiscence and talk about the story behind the door. "It's normal that you don't know. After all, that door hasn't been used for decades." Kale smiled indifferently. The family's headquarters used to have a portal that connected to Wakanda. However, after Kale, Howard, and Logan left Earth one after another, Wakanda gradually lost contact with the family's headquarters. You're the owner of that door, my father's master." T'Challa looked at Kale excitedly. His childhood memories came back bit by bit. When his father taught him combat skills, he mentioned the story of the door and his master, but he didn't mention his identity and name. Master. I guess so. But Logan taught him a little more. Kale patted T'Challa and said softly, I'm very sorry about Chaka's misfortune. However, don't be manipulated by hatred. The one who killed your father might be someone else. T'Challa looked at Baki and then at Kale. He nodded and said, all right. Since you said so, I'll definitely investigate it clearly. Follow me to a place later. I'll tell you the truth. When Kale said this, Rode finally finished his call. He turned around and said to the four, you can go now. Rode made 3 calls in succession. One was to a high-ranking military general, one was to the Secretary of State, and the last one was to the President of the United States. The 3 people's replies were the same, let them go. Although they were helpless, they could only let them go as a sign of respect for the symbol of peace. The 3 big shots who usually had different opinions due to various matters reached an agreement in a short period of time in the face of the symbol of peace. Then let's go. Kale looked as if he had already guessed it. He raised his hand with the ring on it and drew a circle with his right hand. Sparks spun and formed a portal. Kale took the lead and stepped into the portal. Steve nodded at Baki and followed closely behind. After Baki followed, T'Challa was the last to step into the portal. The 4 people left through the portal. The portal gradually shrank until the sparks completely dimmed and extinguished. Rode looked at the confused soldiers and policemen around him, as well as the messy traffic on the road. He lamented bitterly, all that's left is a mess, on the other side of the portal. When Kale brought Dong Bing and the other 2 here, Steve, Baki, and even the Wakandan-born T'Challa opened their eyes wide and looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief. Chapter 6:11. This is... Steve and the other 2 looked around in shock and found that they were in the sky above a city, suspended in a green garden 100 meters above the ground. They stood in the sky garden and looked down. Under the golden sunlight, ultramodern, warship-like high-rise buildings stood in the city like a steel forest, and a strong sense of the future hit them in the face. Sir, times have changed. This was the intuitive feeling of Steve and the other 2. This bustling city seemed to be an era ahead of Earth's civilization. Floating cars could be seen everywhere in the city. Floating cars shuttled back and forth in the sky above the city in an orderly manner, and some huge 3D virtual screens were directly projected in the sky. They looked up at the edge of the city and could see the vast clouds and the sea at the bottom. Even the city below was suspended in the sky. Kale, are we still on Earth? Steve calmed down and looked at Kale. Baki's mouth was wide open and he was also puzzled. T'Challa even subconsciously compared the current city to his country, Wakanda. In terms of technology and products extended by vibranium, Wakanda was naturally unmatched, but some general technology such as anti-gravity, 2-component projection and so on, were obviously more mature and advanced than Wakanda. Of course this is Earth. Kale smiled indifferently and opened his hands toward the city below. Welcome to Cal Country, my country. He winked at Steve and said, this is not only on Earth. How long has it been? You should be very familiar with this place. Very familiar? Steve looked at Kale doubtfully, and his gaze fell back on the shocking city of the future. Soon, as if he had noticed something, Steve's eyes widened and he stuttered, no way. This is Sokovia? How is this possible? Baki and T'Challa were shocked. Sokovia had been turned into a pile of ruins in the cruel battle 3 months ago. In just 3 months, it had turned into a city of the future that was ahead of any other city on Earth. This was simply a miracle. Of course it's possible. Kale smiled without saying anything. With the wealth and energy resources that could rival a country, the connections and manpower of the family Cal, the engineers who mastered the technological civilization of Earth and the galaxy, and the phantom that could transform and modify mechanical structures at will, when all these factors were combined into one, building a futuristic city within 3 months was just a matter of time. Impressive. Steve sighed in amazement and reminisced. He smiled and said, the floating city, the floating garden, and the floating car. These anti-gravity technology products must have Mr. Howard's credit behind them. After all, during World War II, Howard had already demonstrated anti-gravity technology to the world at the World Expo. It was just that the technology was not perfect at that time and could only make the car float for a few seconds, which made the audience laugh. Howard was the chief engineer who designed this city. Kale did not hide the truth. Since the city was floating in the air, the houses and vehicles inside could not be left behind. They also had to use anti-gravity devices. These were Howard's exact words. T'Challa sniffed the air and said in surprise, is it my imagination? The air here is very fresh. It doesn't feel like we're 10,000 meters up in the air at all. At 10,000 meters up in the air, the oxygen was already thin. It was impossible to maintain such a natural and fresh air. Because the energy here is all krypton and electricity, there is no secondary pollution. Kale pointed to the top and explained, and this city is surrounded by a layer of energy shield isolating it from the outside world. The energy shield can simulate the weather, purify the circulating air, and act as the country's first line of defense. The gravity here is also a bit strange. Baki, who had been silent, tried to jump. In the end, he jumped 2 to 3 meters with a light jump. The gravity of every part of this city can be set by the system. The gravity of the residential area and the floating garden is set to 0. 75 times that of Earth's gravity. This kind of environment is the most comfortable for ordinary people. Of course, for us, it doesn't make much of a difference. Kale shrugged. He had gotten used to 10 times the gravity a long time ago. Let's go. I'll bring you guys down to take a look. Just jump down with me. Kale walked to the edge of the floating garden and jumped down toward the road 100 meters below. Steve and the other two looked at each other. They were also very brave. They all jumped down with Kale. The 4 of them freely fell down 100 meters. Steve was planning to use the vibrating gold round shield to offset the impact of the fall. However, when they were about 2 meters from the ground, a gentle cushioning force was released from the road and brought them safely to the ground. It was a superhumanized anti-suicide device. This was also designed by Howard. He was very obsessed with anti-gravity technology. Anti-gravity devices could be seen everywhere. It was also a way to fulfill his desire when he was young. Slap. Kale, who was standing at the side of the road, snapped his fingers. A hovering car immediately stopped in front of them. Unmanned. Seeing that there was not even a driver inside and that it was an empty hovering car, Steve let out a light breath. In a short time he had received too much information. He was already used to this city. The hovering car shot out a green light and scanned Kale and the other 3 to confirm their identities. Identity confirmed. Welcome back, King Kale. Welcome, Captain America, Steve Rogers, Winter Soldier Baki, and King Chara of Wakanda. Let's go to the palace. Kale took the 3 of them into the hovering car. The car slowly started and rose up. It sped through the buildings. Seeing Steve and the other 2 looking at the city through the window, Kale said softly, "You are the registered entrance of the Lord God. Therefore you are recognized by this city. You can freely enter and leave the city and live there forever. Through points and Skynet rewards, you can enjoy all the intelligent measures inside, such as transportation, food, energy, accommodation, education, simulation training ground, and so on." Points? Skynet rewards. Simulation training ground? Steve and the other 2 stared at each other. They did not understand these new terms at all. This time Kale did not need to explain. Inside the hovering car, the car's built-in system answered. Points. Originally, within the family Cal, the family contribution points accumulated by K2 can be exchanged for family resources. Now it is spread throughout the Cal country. Instead of cash, as long as you have enough points, you can exchange for any item in the Cal country. Now that almost everyone in the country was a member of the family Cal, it was natural that points were spread throughout the country. Skynet rewards. On the virtual platform facing the world, Skynet, players can obtain special rewards by challenging special game levels. Through the rewards, they can exchange for points, one-day Cal country travel cards, and even permanent entry. This could be considered as selecting suitable elites and talents from the outside world to replenish the fresh blood of the Cal country. Skynet now covered the whole world. The player base was as high as 1 billion. In this virtual space, some levels could be used to test the potential of the players, and an appropriate olive branch would be extended. Simulation training ground. There is a gravity field inside, simulated battle space, dual exchange platform. Chapter 6:12. Steve and the other 2 did not fully understand. Naturally, they would not be able to understand everything in such a short time. However, anyone with a discerning eye could see that Kale was using the Cal country to play a huge game of chess, enough to affect and change the current world. When the countries outside united and prepared to rely on the Sokovia Agreement to restrict the actions of supers, the Cal country did the opposite. Not only did it encourage its citizens to improve their combat strength and evolve to obtain supers, but it also extended an olive branch to the humans with potential in the outside world. In fact, Kale had wanted Earth to adapt to supers a long time ago so that humans could collectively walk the path of evolution, not just the special heroes like the Avengers. However, as the saying went, more haste, less speed. In the past few years, Kale had not been able to change the humans on Earth through propaganda and unnatural practices. A large part of the reason was that the resources and time were not ripe. Thus, Kale took advantage of the fact that he had created his own country and allowed supers to be used freely in the entire Cal country. He used the Skynet card, points, and various other measures and benefits to quickly improve the overall evolution level of the Cal country. Then he stimulated and activated the entire Earth through the Cal country. In the country that he had created, there were not so many rules and regulations. As long as Kale wanted to do something, he could do it at will. Changing the law was just a matter of words from him. Under the orders given by Kale, the hovering car passed through half of the city, gathered with many other hovering cars, and floated 300 meters above the ground. It was shaped like a sword-shaped fortress that pointed to the sky. That was the symbol of power and power, the sword-shaped palace city. On the smooth and huge square of the castle, many Cal residents arrived by hovering car. There were portals that led to the Sky Garden, Skynet platform, training grounds, and even the outside world. In the center of the square there was a huge virtual screen. The residents came here from time to time to exchange for resources and items through points. When Kale appeared in the central square, the residents immediately knelt down and quickly opened a path. Kale led Steve and the other two to the virtual screen without any obstructions. There were all kinds of exchange items on it, from the super agent drug that could break through the limits of the human body, to the infinite formula drug that could prolong one's life and youth, as well as the hardest and rarest vibrating gold metal on Earth. There were all kinds of priceless items. We can exchange for these resources? Chala was dumbfounded. He asked, a little moved. Before Kale could answer, a beautiful figure suddenly descended from the sky and landed beside Kale. She replied softly, that's right. As long as you come here, you can use your points to exchange for the items on the screen, but the required points are different. Yutong. Kale nodded at the newcomer. Boss, I thought that you would directly open the door to the palace. Yutong winked playfully. Taking advantage of the fact that no one else was around, she gently hugged Kale's left hand with both hands. Chara asked curiously, then how do we obtain points? Yutong replied, it's the simplest way. It was to use the currency circulating in the outside world to exchange for points. However, the exchange rate for points was relatively low. It's best if it's a valuable item such as other resources. Kale smiled indifferently. As long as it was a valuable item, no matter what it was, he could use it as a sacrificial card draw material to draw a new round of cards. Therefore, he was not worried about exchanging for something of little value. Yutong maintained her smile and teased, for example, Steve's vibrating gold round shield and Baki's mechanical left hand. These are all very valuable items that can be exchanged for a large number of points. Steve, Baki, was she serious? She wanted to replace their vibrating gold round shield and mechanical left hand? Why not just take their lives? Kale secretly smiled. At that moment, the two of them did not know that if it wasn't for his existence that interfered with the direction of this world, perhaps by now Steve would have lost his vibrating gold round shield and Baki would have lost his mechanical left hand. Resources and valuable items can be exchanged for points? T'Challa was eager to try. There was a large amount of vibrating gold in Wakanda, and the currency of wealth was just a number. There are other channels such as the Dual Arena, Skynet, missions issued by the Cal country and so on. You three can pay attention to them in the future. Yutong did not forget to promote the Cal country. Kale coughed and said in a deep voice, okay. Yutong, let's get back to the topic. Okay. Yutong nodded and looked sideways at Steve and the other two. She raised her hand in the direction of the palace. Dear guest, let's have a seat in the palace. I will slowly explain the truth behind the attack on the Wakanda king. Cal country main hall of the palace. When Kale and the others sat down on the sofa, Sakura brewed a cup of flower tea for T'Challa to calm down. Yutong sat next to Kale and said softly, after receiving Natasha's call, boss asked me to investigate the Wakanda king. Through the watchtower, I obtained a satellite video of the street outside the New York Foreign Affairs building when the Wakanda king was attacked. Baki was as indifferent as ever. Steve's expression did not change. He believed that if Baki said he did not do it, then it was naturally not him. T'Challa clenched his fists and waited anxiously for Yutong's response. Lord God, show them the video. As soon as Yutong gave the order, a virtual screen appeared in the hall. Although the video on the screen was a little blurry, Steve and the others could still see that it was the street outside the Foreign Affairs building. Before the attack on the Wakanda king began, the busy street was bustling with people. At this moment, Baki, wearing sunglasses and a jacket, appeared. He stopped his motorcycle by the roadside and took an envelope from the mailbox. At the same time, a young man wearing a baseball cap appeared in the alley of the street. While the passers-by were not paying attention, he put his backpack on the ground and unzipped it, revealing a black muzzle that was aimed at the Foreign Affairs building across the street. Then a rocket launcher was launched and hit the 6th floor of the Foreign Affairs building. Taking advantage of the chaos, the young man in the baseball cap quickly zipped up, carried his backpack and left with his head down. Baki stuffed the envelope into his pocket and calmly got on his motorcycle and left. The satellite video ended there. T'Challa was silent. This video completely cleared Baki of suspicion. It was really someone else who killed his father. Steve looked at Baki and asked curiously, "Baki, why did you appear there at that time?" Baki said truthfully, "At that time, someone sent me a letter with some of the words Hydra had used to brainwash me. He asked me to go to the mailbox in front of the Foreign Affairs building at that time and pick up an envelope." "So you went? As expected of you?" Kale didn't know whether to laugh or cry. No matter how he looked at it, it looked like a well-designed trap. "Who's the young man in the video? Yutong, did you find out?" Kale asked. "Of course." Yutong smiled and nodded. She clapped her hands and the information panel with the young man's photo popped up. "His name is Helmut Zemo, a survivor of Sokovia. His parents died in the Battle of Sokovia. He attacked the Wakanda king and framed Baki. His purpose is very clear. It's to make Captain America commit a crime and then cause conflict and division among the Avengers." Chapter 613. The truth had been revealed. After knowing the real murderer of his father, T'Challa requested to return to the outside world. Kale did not ask him to stay. He immediately drew circles and opened the portal to New York. T'Challa was like an injured beast. He bent slightly and stepped through the portal, leaving the main hall of the Cow Country's palace alone. "As for the two of you, you should stay here and lie low for the time being." Kale waved his hand and closed the portal. He looked at Steve and Baki who were sitting on the opposite sofa. He sighed softly and said, "The three of us can be considered old friends reunited." The three of them had fought side by side during World War II. After going around in circles for nearly a century, they finally got together again. Yes. Steve also had mixed feelings. He looked at Baki who remained silent and asked in confusion, "Baki, why are you unwilling to come back to us?" Baki opened his mouth. He lowered his head and hesitated. Finally he said, "The sins on my body are too heavy. It's not suitable for me to stand together with Captain America and the symbol of peace." Steve patted his shoulder and said in a deep voice, "Baki, you have known the two of us for almost 80 years. Are Kale and I people who care about what the outside world thinks?" Kale nodded in agreement. "We are all the same. We are people who overturn the outside world's view with our own strength. A hero whose heart was changed by the outside world's misconceptions and misconceptions could no longer be called a hero. He could only be considered a qualified warrior." But Baki still looked troubled. He pointed to his temple and said in pain, "When I sleep at night, the people I killed flash through my mind from time to time. When I see those words of command, my heart still trembles. I don't know if I will lose control again and become a winter soldier controlled by others." Baki. Steve used a little strength with his left hand to stabilize Baki's trembling shoulders. Kale and Yutong looked at each other and then said indifferently, "Baki, your problem is not a problem now." Baki and Steve were both stunned. How could it not be a problem? Brainwashing and memory disorder were major problems that affected the mind. At present, medical science was still unable to perfect this field. "Baki, times have changed." Kale showed a confident expression. If it was half a year ago he really didn't have the confidence to cure Baki's brain, but now the situation was completely different. Now, there was Illusion, who had a soul gem embedded in his forehead, the Scarlet Witch, who had the ability to control minds, and the Wakanda Kingdom, who had advanced neurological medicine. There were probably more than 3 ways to completely cure a brainwashed Baki. With Kale's simple words, Steve suddenly smiled happily. Although Baki tried to hold it in, his body was still trembling with excitement. Letting Yutong take Steve and Kale to the guest room of the palace to rest, Kale closed his eyes and fell into meditation. Howard was not killed by the Winter Soldiers, and the truth of the attack on the Wakanda King was clear. In this way the civil war between the Avengers was indeed avoided. However, Kale always felt that avoiding civil war was not a good thing. Civil war could be said to be a conflict of ideas and strength. As the saying goes, no discord, no friendship. Through civil war, heroes get to know each other better. When they put down their grudges and joined forces, the team would become stronger. Wait. The original civil war is gone. I can find a suitable reason to let them fight again. Kale opened his eyes and suddenly had an idea. He immediately took out a pen and paper from the card space. Boss, they have already arranged it. You should go to sleep. As soon as Yu Tong returned to the main hall, she saw that her boss seemed to be in high spirits. He was thinking, and writing something on the white paper on the table. Yu Tong, you're here at the right time. Seeing that Yu Tong had returned, Kale took a deep breath, handed the white paper to her and ordered, arrange it now. In the name of the cow country, send out invitations to the people on the list tomorrow. Invitations? Yu Tong blinked curiously. She took the list and glanced at it casually. Her beautiful eyes immediately showed surprise. The Avengers were on the list, including Thor, Poison Agent, and most of the members. There were also second-generation Ant-Man, Spider-Man, and even the Ancient One and Dr. Steven who had not joined the Alliance. It could be said that the people on this list were not ordinary people. If they were not superpowered, they were superheroes. Boss, you invited them all here to declare war on Thanos? Yu Tong looked at Kale in confusion. It's not that early. I invited them to the cow country because I want to hold Earth's first superpower duel. Kale's eyes flashed. Since there was no civil war, he might as well hold a public duel and gather all the inhuman combat power on Earth. Earth's first superpower duel? Yu Tong muttered to herself. The name was a little long and a little strange, but she quickly understood Kale's meaning. The main purpose of this superpower duel was to let the heroes behind the world show their true selves in front of the world. Not only would it let the heroes understand each other better and maintain their fighting spirit to improve their combat power, but it would also let the people of Earth see their superpowers that were unknown to them. It would plant a seed of evolution and understanding in their hearts. Not to mention, using the superpower duel to protest the Sokovia Agreement was indeed a very clever strategy. Since we're holding a superpower duel, there should be enough attractive prizes. Kale held his chin, thought for a while and said decisively, the prize for the third place is a vibranium, a krypton, and an eternal flame. Boss, this is a big deal. Yu Tong was shocked. This was only the third place and everything inside was priceless. Kale continued, the second place winner. I can grant him a wish. This wish can be 100 years of life or an ability card as long as it's within the scope of what I can grant. This. Yu Tong's eyes widened. She had to admit that this prize was tempting even to her. As for the first place. Kale's lips curled up. As he drew the card, a gem with blue light appeared in his hand. Use this as the prize. Boss, this is a joke, right? Yu Tong was really shocked this time. That was a space origin stone. The prize for the first place of the superpower duel was a space origin stone? Probably no civilization in the entire universe would play like this. Kale smiled calmly. Don't worry. I will also participate in this competition as a participant. I knew it. Yu Tong heaved a sigh of relief. With Boss around, this space origin stone was probably just a gimmick. Even so, this competition would still be recorded in history and change the world. Kale kept the space origin stone and said, go. Not only the people on the list, as long as their strength meets the requirements, they can all participate. This superpower duel will be held 3 days later at the training arena in the cow country. Skynet will broadcast the entire competition live. Chapter 6:14. The next morning. Long Island, New York, a luxurious villa by the sea cliff. Pepper, in her formal secretary attire, came to the underground workshop in her high heels. He opened the door. Tani, who had changed into casual clothes, was busy modifying the armor on the workbench. Tani, I knew it. Whenever you're in a bad mood, you'll be here with the mechanical armor. Pepper leaned against the door and said with a smile, I'm sorry. When I'm in a good mood, I'll also stay here. Tani retorted casually. He looked up at Pepper and saw that she was holding a stack of documents. He asked, what? It's early in the morning. Do you want me to get busy again? I've already decided to rest for half a week. I won't even meet the president. Pepper rolled her eyes at him and said softly, just now. The new king of Wakanda, Chara, announced to the public that he had caught the real culprit who killed his father, and took the initiative to revoke the arrest warrant against Winter Soldier Baki. Tani's expression didn't change at all. However, when he picked up the armor, his hand trembled involuntarily. It was apparent that he wasn't concerned about this matter. Pepper continued, if that's the case. Mr. Steve, you can't be considered to have helped the criminal escape. You can be considered to have saved your reputation. His actions were too impulsive and reckless. Tani put down the armor and couldn't help but comment, If not for Godfather's intervention this time, he might have fallen into darkness. Pepper shook her head and said softly, but now it seems that he might have done the right thing. Tani didn't linger on this topic any longer. He asked, "Did you come here to tell me about this on purpose?" "Of course. I know that a certain man couldn't sleep last night because he was concerned about the aftermath of last night's incident." Pepper teased. She then took out an invitation letter from her bosom and returned to the main topic. "All right, let's go. This morning, Kale's godfather sent an invitation to you." "Godfather's invitation? Let me see." Tani's interest was immediately piqued. He took the initiative to step forward, took the invitation and opened it to read. His face was first shocked, then puzzled, and finally turned into serious contemplation. "What's wrong? What's written on the invitation?" Pepper asked curiously. After all, it was Godfather's invitation and she hadn't opened it yet. "Something big is about to happen." Tani folded the invitation and looked at the armor on the workbench. Since it was Godfather's invitation, and it was the cow country that his father had designed, there was no reason for him not to go. However, he had just signed the Sokovia agreement last night. "What's wrong? Why do you look so conflicted?" Pepper was even more puzzled. "Get ready." Tani sighed softly and handed the invitation to Pepper. "We're leaving for the cow country the morning after tomorrow." New York First High School. In the grade 1 classroom, Peter sat on a chair with his chin in his hand. His eyes were blank as he stared blankly into space. Carrying his bag, Ned suddenly rushed to the table wanting to scare Peter. However, Peter glanced at him and continued to stare at the blackboard in a daze. Fatty Ned put his hands on the table and looked at him in surprise. I said, what's wrong with you recently? You're so listless." "It's none of your business." Peter was still listless. He had completely adapted to high school life. However, in terms of love, he still hadn't made friends with the girl he adored, Liz Allen. In terms of his dream career, Tony Stark hadn't looked for him recently. Both his love and career had fallen, which made Peter feel even more disappointed. Ned patted Peter's shoulder and whispered into his ear, "Be happy. Let me tell you a piece of breaking news. In 2 days, Skynet will have a world-class event. It happens to be a Sunday. I'll go to your house then and we'll use VR equipment to log on to Skynet and play." "Okay." Peter nodded in agreement, but he still wasn't interested. After Ned returned to his seat, Peter was about to take out his textbook from the drawer when he found a strange letter with a devil logo on the seal. On the outside of the envelope was written, "To Little Spider-Man Peter Parker." The sender was Kyle Carl, Generation 1. "Mr. Kale?" With the invitation in his hand, Peter stood up abruptly, causing the students in the classroom to look at him strangely. "Boring." MJ looked at Peter with even more disdain. "PIM Technology Industry." In the laboratory with the enlarged worker ants as employees, Hank Pym and his daughter Hope were conducting research on the Pym particles. "Look, you two." At this moment, Scott danced into the laboratory and showed them the invitation in his hand. "This is a symbol of peace, an invitation from Mr. Kale. He wants me to go to the Cal country to participate in the superpower competition. This must be an affirmation for me, right? Man, go, go, go." Hank and Hope looked at Scott, who was standing at the door, as if they were looking at a retard. The two of them did not say anything and returned to their research. Hey. Scott was deeply shocked and exclaimed, "The prizes for the top 3 of the competition are unprecedented. And the contestants can also bring their loved ones or family members to the Cal country to watch the competition." Hope said mercilessly, "With your level, you've probably been to the finals. Don't underestimate me. I've recently studied a secret move." Scott clenched his fist and said unhappily, "I'm not interested in the competition, but I do know about the Cal country. A few days ago that old guy Howard also sent me a message and asked me to go and take a look." Hank pondered for a moment and agreed. "Then let's go. Just treat it as a vacation and travel." Hope snorted coldly. Sure. As long as Scott doesn't lose the Ant-Man name." Kamartaj Mage Temple. In the main hall, Alpha Centauri, who always wore a yellow robe, sat cross-legged with an open invitation on the table. In front of her stood Mage Emodu, Mage Supreme. Emodu's dark face was full of confusion. He questioned, "Us mages have been in seclusion for hundreds of years, protecting Earth in secret. This superpower competition is obviously a big fight, and it's a show in front of the world. Are we really going to step into this muddy water?" Alpha Centauri did not speak. After a long silence, she said indifferently, "Times have changed. Such a simple sentence could not be accepted by Mo for a moment, but he knew that the Ancient One had made up her mind. No matter how much he said, it was useless. He could only pray that the Ancient One's decision this time was the right one. "How's Steven?" Alpha Centauri asked. Mo replied, "He's officially a beginner. Now he only knows a few beginner spells." Alpha Centauri said calmly, "Then that's fine. This time bring him along. You and I, the three of us, will go to the Cal country the day after tomorrow." "Yes." Mo agreed helplessly. Chapter 6:15. 2 days later. In the Cal country, suspended 10,000 meters above the Atlantic Ocean, in an ultramodern bustling neighborhood. Wow. Peter and Ned, who were carrying backpacks respectively, stood in front of the crowded street. They looked at the warship-shaped buildings, sky gardens, and new things like hovering cars that they had never seen before. Their mouths were wide open in shock, enough to stuff 2 eggs in. "This is great. This is like the future city in the Star Wars game. To be able to see it with my own eyes, am I dreaming?" The fat on Ned's face trembled, and he looked around like a country bumpkin. Peter was not much better than Ned. While marveling at the advanced and spectacular Cal country, he looked at Ned helplessly. 2 days ago, after he received the invitation, he often went out to exercise in a spider suit in order to let the world know the name of Spider-Man in the superpower competition. As a result, this morning, when Peter went home to pack his things and was about to rush to the pickup location of the invitation, he was bumped into by his friend Ned, who was waiting in his room with VR equipment. In desperation, Peter could only tell Ned that he was Spider-Man and that he had to hide from Aunt May to participate in the competition, and then bring him along. Ned excitedly put his arm around Peter's shoulder and encouraged him. "Peter, don't be nervous. Didn't you say that you know Iron Man? Maybe he will also participate in the competition this time. Do your best and play well." "I wasn't nervous at first, but now that you said that, I'm a little nervous." Peter took a deep breath and covered his chest with his racing heart. This day might be the key day for him to debut as a hero. He wanted to prove his value to Mr. Stark and Mr. Kale today. "That's right. Where should we go now?" Ned scratched his head and looked at the strange shining street blankly. "Just now, K2 left them here and drove the hovering car away." "You ask me, who should I ask? It's my first time here too." Peter spread his hands. Whoosh! A cool-looking hover motorcycle with blue flames spurting from its tail suddenly descended from the sky and landed beside the two of them. Cool. Ned's eyes lit up. The hovering motorcycle was even more eye-catching than a hovering car. Moreover, the driver of the motorcycle was a tall and strong young man. He was wearing a black motorcycle suit and a black and gold helmet that covered his face. The motorcyclist reminded them coldly, "Kids, this is a special period. It's very dangerous to wander around here." "This voice you are?" Peter's eyes widened in disbelief. Confirming his reaction, the black gold helmet worn by the motorcyclist faded away like a thread, revealing a face that had experienced the vicissitudes of life. "Mr. Eddie, why are you here?" Peter exclaimed. "I've always lived here." Eddie rolled his eyes in annoyance. In the past, family Cal members were scattered all over the world. Since the Cal country was built, K2 and his family all lived in the Cal country. "Who is he, Peter? Do you know him?" Ned was surprised. Peter lowered his voice and explained to Ned, "His name is Eddie Carl. He's a member of Family Cal. He should be considered a member of the Avengers." Cool. Ned was even more excited. He coughed and said truthfully, "Mr. Eddie, actually, the two of us are lost. We don't know how to get to the duel arena." Looking at Peter, who lowered his head in shame, Eddie smiled and gestured behind him. "You're also going to participate in the competition, right? Hurry up and get in the car. I'm going the same way." "All right." Ned was not polite to Eddie. He pulled Peter and the two of them sat on the hovering motorcycle driven by Eddie. "Sit tight." Eddie had just finished speaking. In the next moment, with the roaring sound of brakes, the motorcycle rushed into the sky, leaving behind 2 horrifying whales in the sky above the Cal country. In front of the sword-shaped palace in the central square. Before the official start of the competition at noon, the huge square was bustling with noise and excitement. The contestants, the visiting family members, and the residents of the Cal country were all gathering here in an endless stream. Eddie led Peter and Ned to the middle of the square. Peter looked around either strangely shaped or muscular contestants, and his body instinctively tensed up. "Mr. Eddie, will all the heroes of the Avengers participate in this competition?" Ned asked as if they were familiar with each other. Eddie shrugged and replied, "As far as I know, almost everyone should be here." Not to mention that the prizes for the top 3 are extremely rich. The top 8 will be rewarded with generous points. Of course, some people will come not only for the prizes, but also to witness the change of an era. The change of an era? Peter and Ned looked at Eddie in surprise. That's right. Eddie nodded and did not explain further. Kale's superpower duel was prepared for superpowers and heroes on the surface, but in fact, it was to give the countries and ordinary people in the world a head-on blow. He told them not to be afraid of the future and to be conservative. He told them that the current era had changed. Instead of stopping superpowers from moving, it was better to adapt to the pace of the times. Can you be a little more obedient, you piece of rags? The sudden dispute in the square in front of them attracted the attention of Eddie and the other two. They approached and were shocked to find a white man in his early 30s arguing with a cloak. Yes, that's right. The white man was wearing a strange robe and holding a corner of the dark red cloak in his hand. The cloak seemed to have its own thoughts and floated in the air, wanting to fly to the other side of the square. Beside the white man stood a bald woman and a black man. The 3 of them were wearing strange robes and attracted the attention of many people. Okay. Alpha Centauri reached out and stroked the cloak. The cloak immediately hung down and automatically hung back on the white man's back. Sorcerer Supreme this way? Glancing at the onlookers, Modu reached out and guided Alpha Centauri and Steven to go first. He walked at the back and the 3 quickly disappeared into the crowd. Did you see that? The cloak was flying. Is that magic? Or is it magic? It seems that the legends do exist. Camardus, is it too late to withdraw now? Some people whispered in disgust. Eddie watched Alpha Centauri and the others leave and said to Peter, "Little Spider, those 3 are not simple, especially that woman. If you meet her in the competition, you'd better surrender." Peter nodded silently. Although it was only for a moment, his spider senses, including Peter's, still caught the amazing pressure from Alpha Centauri. Wow, there are so many people here. Scott, calm down. Don't embarrass PIM technology. At this moment, a familiar voice suddenly entered Peter's ears. Chapter 6:16. This voice, I think I've heard it somewhere before. Peter and Eddie's faces moved slightly as they looked in one direction, just in time to see Scott, Hank, and Hope arriving at the central square. Although Scott wasn't wearing the Ant-Man battle suit at this time, his wacky appearance and voice were quickly recognized by Peter and Eddie, who had beast-level keen senses. No matter what, they had fought side by side before. Sensing the strange gazes of Peter and Ned, Hope frowned warily. Hank stopped and asked Scott, "Scott, do you know them?" Scott's eyes widened as he looked at Peter and Eddie blankly. Spider-Man, Poison Agent, and Ant-Man, who were dressed in their daily clothes, stared at each other. A few seconds later, Scott seemed to realize something and said, "Wait a minute, you're not from that night?" Before he could finish his words, Peter and Eddie reacted quickly. They stepped forward at the same time and covered his mouth tightly. Scott whimpered a few times and struggled. Only then did he realize that there were too many people in the square, and it was inconvenient to expose their hidden identities. That. Peter clamped Scott's thigh with his legs and covered his mouth. Facing the strange gazes of Ned and Hope, he explained awkwardly, "We're friends, right?" Scott was sweating profusely and could only keep nodding. "You won't say anything casually, will you?" Eddie continued to confirm with Scott. Scott nodded fiercely. His face was so red that he couldn't breathe. Peter and Eddie looked at each other and released Scott at the same time. "You guys are so ruthless. I almost died," Scott shouted exaggeratedly. He looked at Peter and Eddie with a complicated expression. After confirming his guess, he gasped and said, "I didn't expect to meet you two here. You should be here to participate in the competition, right?" Eddie put his hands in his pockets and snorted non-committally. "Scott, are they really your friends?" Hope pointed at Peter curiously. The age difference between the 3 of them really didn't seem like the type of friends. Scott scratched his head and exhaled softly. "Sort of. The situation that day was too complicated. I'll explain it to you slowly when we get back." Hope looked at him coldly and said coldly, "You really should explain it well." "Wow. You must be Dr. Hank Pym." Ned looked at Hank in disbelief, his fat jiggling with excitement. "I've seen pictures of you on the internet. I personally like the Pym theory paper you wrote. The concept and setting are really great. I've always thought that you're a scientist no worse than Mr. Howard." "Thank you." Hank slowly pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose and took the initiative to take out a pen from his suit pocket. "Do you need an autograph?" "Of course. Can I?" Ned simply turned around and let Hank sign on his bag. After that, Ned clenched his fist and said excitedly, "If I can see the birth of the PIM particle technology in my lifetime and make people and objects smaller or bigger at will, then I will have no regrets in my life." "Peter, Scott." Hank narrowed his eyes and looked at Ned happily. He smiled and invited, "Little friend, you're very good and have good taste. Later, do you want to watch the competition together?" "That would be my pleasure." Ned's eyes lit up. There was no reason to refuse at all. He decisively sold out his gay friend Peter. "All right." Eddie looked at the smart watch on his left hand and reminded, "It's almost time. We should go to the training arena to sign up." "In that case, those of you who want to sign up, go and sign up yourselves. We'll stay here and wait for the competition to start." Hank waved his hand at Scott and the others and didn't forget to say, "Don't embarrass us. If you participate, then use the function of the battle suit well." "Definitely." Scott nodded firmly and prepared to go to the training arena with Eddie and Peter. "I don't know the way here. Can I go with you to sign up for the competition?" At this moment, a masked man wearing a tight red uniform with two katanas crossed on his back walked out of the crowd and stood in front of everyone more naturally than Ned. "Oh, I forgot to introduce myself first. I'm Wuxia. You can also call me Death Attendant." The masked man put his hands on his waist and blinked. In the central square of the Cal country, through a portal, one could reach one of the most important buildings in the country, the training arena. This place was built at the top of the Cal country between the city of Cal and the watchtower. It was a giant floating platform that existed alone. The gravity, air, and even all parameters of this floating platform were controlled by the Lord God system and covered by the second structure and the Skynet virtual network. It could be said that apart from a huge duel arena, everything else here was fabricated through the second structure and projection. When the contestants, who had changed their clothes and prepared for a series of matches, arrived on the platform, the number of contestants far exceeded Kale's original list. After all, almost all of K2 were present this time, as well as people from all over the world who pursued the limits of human beings. Spider-Man, Ant-Man, Poison Agent, and Deadpool, who had changed into their exclusive combat attire, temporarily formed a small team and came to a corner of the empty duel arena. Above their heads was the bright starry sky displayed by the second structure technology. The other heroes of the Avengers should also be here. Among the four, Poison Agent was the tallest and most burly. He raised his eyes and quickly found Captain America and others standing in the center of the duel arena, almost forming a team of their own. It's just that in that fairly harmonious team, Iron Man is not inside, but he stays alone in another corner. Sure enough, the rumors are true. He signed the agreement first. Poison Agent said to himself in a hoarse voice. Spider-Man, Ant-Man, and Deadpool didn't think so much. The three of them stood face to face in a triangle and began to complain about each other's attire. "What a coincidence, our uniform style is all ant red?" Deadpool took the lead in teasing. "What ant red? I don't understand, but mine is spider red." Spider-Man responded and pointed to the spider pattern on his chest. "Red spider? I'm red ant." Ant-Man shrugged and said, "I mainly have a move. If I make the uniform black, it will look too much like an alien monster. Besides, these clothes are not mine and I can't change them at will. Most of the non-human combat forces on Earth are gathered here. Can you be more serious?" Poison Agent slapped his forehead, and even Poison couldn't help but complain. Suddenly, in the bright starry sky above the duel arena, countless stars condensed and formed the figure of a silver-haired young man. He opened his hands to both sides and looked at the crowd. "Welcome to my world." Chapter 617. It's a symbol of peace. The Emperor of the Cal country. The strongest man on Earth, a living legend. When the huge projection of the silver-haired youth appeared in the sky above the duel, the contestants immediately burst into exclamations, and countless people's burning eyes focused on Kale's figure. Most of the people who came here, some for fame, some wanted to see the era, and some wanted to gain wealth and so on, and all of this was led by Kale. Kale was the only person who didn't revolve around the Earth. He had transcended the superpowers long ago, and he was a god-level hero who changed the world and the era with his own strength, constantly creating miracles. Such a character, even the Alpha Centauri, who had lived for hundreds of years, recognized him from the bottom of his heart. How could the others not be convinced by his charm? Since the registered contestants are all here, let's move the audience over. Kale's projection smiled and snapped his fingers. In the next moment, the empty scene outside the duel field immediately turned into the surrounding audience seats, and then figures kept appearing in the seats. They were the audience who came to the Cal country to watch the competition. After nearly 10,000 live audience members took their seats, the floating platform exploded with even louder cheers. The sound waves of screams and cheers almost lifted the starry sky. "Peter, come on." Ned sat slightly in the front position, sandwiched between Hank and Hope, holding a support stick from somewhere and waving it vigorously to cheer them on. "Ned, don't call me by my real name." Spider-Man on the field shrank his body. Fortunately, there were too many contestants on the field and no one knew who Ned was calling. "This scene and atmosphere is once in 1,000 years." Poison Agent sighed and Ant-Man and Deadpool nodded in agreement. They had all been regarded as freaks and were not recognized by others. Even if they had saved the world many times, there were still a large number of people who questioned, feared, rejected, and even hostile because of their ugly and frightening appearance. It was the first time for many of them to stand on the world stage under the spotlight while maintaining their superpowers and combat attire. This was the effect that Kale wanted. He wanted superheroes to become real celebrities. Only then would more heroes come forward to save the world. In other words, that was the attitude they should have in the world, instead of being regarded as a scourge by the superpowers, whose sharp claws and teeth were cut off, and locked in a cage that restricted their freedom of movement. "All right, quiet down for a moment." Kale's projection pressed down with both hands, and in the next moment, the originally deafening duel arena became absolutely silent. It was so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping on the ground could be heard. "Very good." Kale's projection smiled and said, "Since the contestants and the audience are all here from now on, everything here will be recorded. Through the Skynet platform, ordinary people from all over the world will be able to watch the competition live on Skynet through VR equipment." As soon as he finished speaking, a dozen small aircraft flew into the sky above the duel arena and recorded the contestants in detail. The contestants and the audience held their breaths. Everyone knew that Kale's action would be taken. World. Kale said calmly, "Yes, you heard it right. Today, superpowers, heroes, advanced technology, strange spells, and all the unnatural forces that were originally hidden on Earth will not be held back. They will be revealed to the public in this duel arena." Wow. The audience at the Skynet platform, which had a total of more than 300 million people watching this superpower duel, burst into excited cheers. Kale lowered his voice and continued to explain, "Many contestants already know the prizes for the top 3. First place, Space Origin Stone. Second place, I can accept any wish within the range. Third place, Krypton, Vibranium, and Eternal Fire. The top 8 contestants will be rewarded with a large number of points, which can be exchanged for money, abilities, and even lifespan in the cow country." The contestants began to rub their palms eagerly. These prizes were huge and no one could resist the temptation of the prizes. "I will also participate as a contestant in the later stages. But not now. There are as many as 118 contestants in the duel arena. There are too many people, so I need to go through several rounds of screening." Kale narrowed his eyes meaningfully. "Screening?" Spider-Man muttered to himself. He suddenly had a bad feeling. Of course he was not the only one. Many people in the arena felt a chill down their spines. They felt that they were about to face something very terrible. Kale opened his hands and continued, "The rules of the test are very simple. It's like playing a game. I will set up a virtual opponent for you. The map will be random. He will be the gatekeeper. You only need to defeat or kill him or last 3 minutes in his hands, and you will pass the first round of screening." As if not giving the contestants time to prepare, Kale had just finished talking about the rules when the projection gradually dimmed. Finally, he said lightly, "Now the test officially begins." Spider-Man was a little flustered. He was not mentally prepared yet. "See you later," Poison Agent said quickly. "Okay. I hope I'm not the only one who passes." Deadpool nodded in response. "I won't fall in the first round." Ant-Man snorted. Before the 4 of them finished speaking, the huge duel arena was enveloped by a dazzling white light. The contestants disappeared one after another, as if they had been teleported to another space. At the same time, 118 independent projection screens were suspended over the auditorium and the Skynet virtual platform. From the perspective of little Spider-Man Peter, covered by the white light, Spider-Man subconsciously closed his eyes, but when he opened them again, Eddie and others around him were gone. The area where he was located also changed from a lively duel arena to a scorched area full of smoke. Random battle scene. World War II land battlefield. Test time, 2:59. Looking at the 2 lines of text that appeared above his field of vision, Spider-Man's body shuddered and he glanced around in a panic. The test has begun? What Mr. Kale said the virtual opponent is. Ta-ta-ta. A tall dark figure of a man walked out of the front war zone. He stood proudly on the scorched earth, his red eyes locked coldly on Spider-Man. No way. Aren't you Mr. Kale? Spider-Man's eyes widened in disbelief. He was wearing a dark tight battle suit, carrying a long sword on his back, and 2 energy pistols tied to his calf. When his tall and strong body stood on the hillside, he looked like a god of death, a strong evil spirit and the smell of blood. There was no mistake. The man in front of him was Kale, exactly the same as in the war propaganda film during World War II. The man before he became a symbol of peace, the Major General of the United States who killed without blinking an eye. The devil in the eyes of the enemy. Kale didn't say a word, reached for the long sword behind him, and quickly swooped down towards Spider-Man. His body trembled from the bottom of his heart. Spider-Man screamed in fear and almost subconsciously turned around and ran. This is clearly hell difficulty. Chapter 618. Number 007 Virtual Test Space. Random Battle Scene. World War II Naval Battleship. Test Time, 2:06. On the deck of the battleship sailing on the sea, 2 figures, one black and one red, were engaged in a fierce blade game, and even the surrounding air became fierce. Sparks splashed, and Deadpool held the sharp warrior's double swords in his hand. Under the attack of Kyle's left claw, he was defeated and was completely at a disadvantage. The sharp and fatal claw attack seemed to come from the hands of a beast, and it did not give him a chance to breathe. If the double sword did not keep up with the attack speed, he would be cut open by the claws in the next moment. Deadpool, who used to only attack and not defend, was unable to take back the initiative from Kale this time. Speed, strength, explosion, and fighting skills are all unattainable by humans. This man is really a monster. Slamming back a few steps, Deadpool pulled back to a certain position. He looked down at his chest, which was bloody. Although he avoided the vital parts, several shallow claw marks were left. Kale was still chasing after him. On the way, he coughed slightly, and a wisp of bright blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Huh? What's going on? Deadpool was still retreating, and when he saw this scene he was a little stunned. He was very sure that he had never attacked Kale before. Right. There was a rumor that after the man attacked Nissan, he resigned from the position of Major General on the day of his return. Since then he has rarely appeared in front of the people. I heard that he is seriously ill. Deadpool thought of this and couldn't help but smile bitterly. Unbelievable. The man in front of him was obviously seriously injured and coughed up blood during the battle, but the more he fought, the braver he became, like an invincible killing god. Terrible, it's terrible. It's impossible to defeat him. I can only find a way to delay these few minutes. Raising his eyes and looking at the countdown, there was still 1.5 minutes before the end. 3 minutes became extremely long at this time. Fortunately, delaying time I still have a skill. After all, I have an immortal body. Deadpool smiled confidently, and in these few seconds, the claw marks on his chest had all healed by themselves. Step. Deadpool's back suddenly hit the iron railing, but unknowingly he came to the end of the deck and could no longer retreat. In this moment of trance, the virtual character World War II Kale had already arrived in front of Deadpool. He waved his left hand forward fiercely, and the air was cut in half by a sharp object. Poochie. An arm was thrown high, blood splashed, Deadpool's smile froze on his face, and there was a bit of astonishment in his eyes. This time Kale did not use his claws but the sword on his back. Sodium carbon steel sword. Number 99 Virtual Test Space. Random Battle Scene, New York Central Street. Testing time, 2 o'clock. Eddie, in the state of symbiotic fusion with the toxin, turned into a humanoid monster. It threw a punch forward and blasted Kale away with the sodium carbon steel sword in front of him. Smashing through the glass door on the first floor of the building, Kale continued to roll until he disappeared into the building. Be careful, Eddie. Don't let that sword touch you again. Toxin's voice sounded in his mind. Of course I know. Toxin agent glanced sideways at his shoulder. There was a shocking sword mark on it. It cut open the dark shell and almost touched Eddie's body inside. Be careful. As soon as Toxin's voice fell, an exhibition car suddenly flew out from inside the building. Toxin agent reacted extremely quickly. He slammed his left hand and blasted the car to the side of the road. The car rolled several times in a row and finally hit the wall of the building and self-destructed. This level of power. Toxin Agent narrowed his eyes and looked at the first floor of the building where Kale had just disappeared. There were heavy footsteps and a tall and burly figure walked out of it. Almost as tall as him, the monster's body was dark and its long and narrow eyes were red. When Kale returned to the street, he had completely changed his appearance. His body was covered with a tough stratum corneum. Even the icy cold aura on his body became violent and surging. I understand now. The reason why the Patriarch was invincible during World War II. Toxin Agent muttered to himself. Under the resonance of the symbiotic demon and the deeper meaning, he felt a trace of fear in this symbiotic state. This fear came mostly from the poison. Toxin, do you want to escape? Toxin Agent took a deep breath and asked. Toxin was silent for a moment and responded decisively, No, I want to continue fighting. Fight, Eddie? If we keep fighting like this, we will eventually find the meaning of our existence. At the same time, Kale had already rushed forward violently. His right hand was clenched into a fist like a heavy hammer. Then as you wish. Toxin Agent laughed mischievously. Then with a firm horse stance he faced Kale face to face and threw out a punch with all his strength. Two fists of similar size collided. In the next moment, the impact of the fist shook the air and swept out to the surrounding street area. The glass of the nearby building's windows and doors exploded. Virtual Test Space 069. Random Battle Scene, New Star Central Square. Test Time, 1:46. Cyclone spurted out from the tail of his steel wings. Falcon floated 70 meters in the air and looked down in a sorry state. He could see Kale's dark black monster form rampaging through the square and wreaking havoc. Even Mr. Kale of this era is ridiculously strong. Even the artillery shells he carries with him can't do anything to him. Falcon patted his chest in shock. But as long as I float in the air and leave the attack range, I should be safe. As Falcon thought of this, he happened to meet Kale's red eyes at the bottom of the square. Kale's lips curled into a smile. He squatted down slightly and got into a prelude to jump. It can't be. This is a height of nearly 100 meters. Falcon had an ominous premonition in his heart. As if confirming his guess, Kale suddenly jumped up vigorously. A white wave spread out on the floor as he quickly closed in on Falcon. Run. Alarm bells rang in Falcon's heart and he increased his altitude again. Next he saw that Kale's rising speed was getting slower and slower. Just as he was about to fall, Kale's feet stomped on the air as if he was stepping on an invisible floor. In the blink of an eye, he had closed the remaining distance. Air sprint. You can do that? 100 meters in the air, Falcon looked at Kale who had surpassed him. He was scared silly. Virtual Test Space 057. Random Battle Scene, Planet Sala's Junkyard. Test Time, 1:28. In the junkyard's mirror dimension, Steven was in a sorry state. Together with the magic cloak, the two were curled up in a ball and shivering. I was almost done for just now. Fortunately, I escaped to the mirror dimension in time. Steven sat on a pile of garbage and let out a long sigh. Facing an enemy that even spells were ineffective against, it was difficult for him to even stall for time. But it was fine now. The mirror dimension was an absolutely safe place for mages like them. Just as Steven was waiting for the countdown to end, in an area behind him, sparks spun into a wheel. After the portal was formed, Kale's figure walked out from it. Chapter 619. Facing the virtual gatekeeper character World War II Kale, each individual test space was like a small hell, and the contestants inside would let out extremely tragic wails from time to time. In these short 3 minutes, many screens in the test space dimmed one after another. When a contestant died in the test space, their body would be removed from the suspended platform and they would be judged by the main god system to have no fate with this superpower competition. And in the virtual space after death, the body and mind would always remember this bone-deep tremor. On this day, many people finally recalled the fear of being dominated by Kale. Not only was the atmosphere in the test space solemn, but at this time the audience watching the test through the Skynet platform also didn't dare to breathe. They held their breath and opened their eyes wide, afraid that they would miss the exciting scene if they blinked. More than 100 live broadcast screens in the test space dazzled them. Most people could only pay attention to the contestants they supported. For example, Iron Man and Captain America, who had extremely high public support. They were the pillars of the Avengers and the first batch of superheroes. Now that the two were in the social fallacy, their performance in this superpower competition was naturally the focus of attention. It could be seen through the 088 screen. In the random city map. Iron Man faced Kale in the symbiotic form, flying in the air while maintaining air supremacy. The energy laser, small cannonballs, and so on carried by the Iron Man suit tilted towards the ground where Kale was. One after another, explosions like fireworks forcibly suppressed Kale's strong physique. With this battle situation, even if Iron Man couldn't defeat World War II Kale, he could easily hold on for 3 minutes. As expected of Iron Man, the student is better than the teacher. This made many people exclaim. They didn't know that this was the result of Tani being ravaged by Kale for several years on the way to the Milky Way Alliance. As for the 001 test space where Captain America was, the setting was a military base playground during World War II. Kale from World War II, plus Captain America who had never changed his style, the sword that represented the United States crusade, the shield that represented the United States protection. When the two fought fiercely, it was a dream of the classic battle during World War II. Was a pity. Captain America was still on the receiving end of the beatings. However, not to mention his vibrating gold round shield, his super soldier physique was also famous for its resistance to beatings. This made many of the audience sigh with emotion. Captain America had passed the test and it was a sure thing. In addition to Iron Man and Captain America, there were also Black Widow and Scarlet Witch in the Avengers. As beautiful female heroes, they were also popular. Black Widow's combat level was not outstanding compared to other heroes, but because of her long-term contact with Hulk, her escape and evasion values were full. She happened to be randomly assigned to the battle map of the underground karst cave, so the test space she was in was playing out the scene of the temple escape. What was even more shocking was that Scarlet Witch, who had just joined the Avengers, used her own strange ability to firmly suppress Kale, forcing the symbiotic demon in his body to separate from himself. Incredible, the times have really changed. With Kale in World War II as a direct comparison, many of the spectators were both delighted and shocked. They were delighted that Earth had a new hero with high combat power, but they were shocked that such a powerful superhuman could be restricted by a secular agreement. Look, it's test space 027. Someone in the audience shouted, and a portion of the audience looked at screen 027. The battle map was a savanna, and a humanoid Black Panther bared its claws and rushed toward Kale in his normal form. The sodium-carbon steel sword quickly slashed at the Black Panther, but it did not even leave a white mark on the Black Panther. There were no sparks either. The Black Panther ignored the slashes of the long sword and directly closed in on Kale, who was wearing the dark suit. It was purely a contest of combat skills. A Black Panther? I heard that it's the new king of Wakanda. No way, then what is he wearing? Some of the audience started to discuss the Black Panther. After all, Wakanda was a poor country, and it was unbelievable that they had such an impeccable Black Panther suit. Before they could finish their discussion, in less than 3 minutes, the screen above them turned off, and a figure suddenly appeared in the arena. It was a woman in a robe. The Ancient One. Alpha Centauri was the first to leave the test space. She stood alone in the huge arena with a faint smile on her face. She did not look like she had just gone through a battle. Instead, it was as simple as having a meal and a cup of tea. The audience and the Skynet platform were silent. The audience was stunned, and their eyes were focused on Alpha Centauri. In less than 3 minutes she came out of the test space. What did this mean? It meant that the woman in front of them had quickly defeated Kale, the legendary fighter who was once called invincible by the world. After the silence, the audience was not stingy with their applause and cheers. They looked at Alpha Centauri with admiration. The sorcerers who were watching the match through the Skynet platform were puzzled. They did not know why the Sorcerer Supreme, who had secretly protected Earth for hundreds of years, suddenly showed her strength in front of the world. Only a few people, including Kale, knew. Alpha Centauri no longer had any scruples. This meant that her time was coming. Some stars were dim all their lives. They were in the dark universe. Only in the end would they burst out with the brightest radiance and become meteors that cut across the sky. Not long after Alpha Centauri returned to the arena, 3 more figures returned to the arena almost at the same time. One was Hellfire, who was holding a broken axe and emitting green flames. Another was the beautiful and powerful Scarlet Witch, and the last was Illusion, who had a gem inlaid on her forehead. Thor was absent from this competition due to some matters. Otherwise, there was a high chance that he would be in this line. Before the 3 minutes were about to end, Iron Man, Yutong, Lucy, and the Poison Agent appeared in time. They were Kale's group of relatives and friends. By defeating the seriously ill World War II Kale, they had indirectly proved themselves. A total of 8 people defeated the legend of the old era. The audience was so shocked that they could not speak. Another 5 seconds passed and the 3-minute countdown ended. The screens above the arena were collectively turned off. Almost 30 figures suddenly returned to the arena. Huff huff huff. Spider-Man was really like a spider lying on the ground and gasping for breath. Fortunately, I was almost killed by Mr. Kale. Spider-Boy, it was just a simulation. Your physical strength should not have been consumed. It was just a psychological illusion. Deadpool, who returned to the arena, was bickering, but he also touched his left arm with lingering fear. You all cleared the level. Ant-Man smiled in relief. It should be said that we survived. My body was cut into a dozen pieces. Deadpool spread out his hands, glanced at the silent poison agent and praised, "The moment I returned to the arena, I noticed you. You're different from us. You really defeated the person who cleared the level." Spider-Man and Ant-Man looked at the poison agent. They had personally experienced how difficult it was. Sort of. The poison agent only spat out these 2 words. Chapter 620. The spotlight shone on the arena, and most of the contestants who passed the test had a trace of fatigue on their faces. Although it was only a simulated virtual space and enemies, in the face of the legendary heroes of the old era, many people had gone through a life-and-death battle, gritting their teeth and persevering through the hellish test space. No matter what, the 4 of us have passed. Whoever is eliminated in the test will be too shameful. Ant-Man let out a light breath, glanced at the contestants who had also passed and said in a serious tone, "It's just that there are more contestants who passed than expected." More than 30 people could last at least 3 minutes in the hands of World War II Kale. This showed that the Earth had undergone earth-shaking changes in the past few decades, and many superheroes and superhumans had appeared frequently. Among this group of people, the heroes of the Avengers had all passed, which was beyond the expectations of most of the audience. However, there was also a group of about 7 or 8 people. They were all dressed in black combat uniforms, wearing demonic masks, and carrying cold weapons ranging from sabers, swords, spears, and axes. Clearly, they were the carts from the kingdom of Karl. A team of people passed the test. That's really amazing. Ant-Man stared at the group of K2 and noticed an ominous evil aura from them. "I remember those people, aren't you in charge?" Spider-Man looked at the poison agent curiously. Eddie was the captain of the K2 team. "Those 7 people are not." The poison agent shook his head and said, "They are the elites of K2 and have been bestowed by His Majesty Kale. Each of them can be independent, and their strength is not worse than the heroes of the Avengers." He paused and glanced at Deadpool. "Also, I'm not sure. In addition, the one next to you is also a K2, but his identity is a bit special and not in the regular establishment." "What?" Spider-Man and Ant-Man were shocked. After all this time, it turned out that 2 of the 4 of them were from the Cal country. "Ah, I was recognized? As expected of the captain of the K2 team, your eyesight is excellent. My old man often talks about you." Seeing that his identity was exposed, Deadpool did not pretend and admitted it happily. The poison agent continued to expose him. "If you come back earlier, you should be able to serve as the captain of the second team. With His Majesty Kale's favor, he should be no weaker than me." "Maybe." Deadpool was silent and did not continue the topic. His existence was created by that man, and he had always tried his best to reject this knowledge. It was precisely because of this that he did not dare to meet Kale. Everyone was still whispering to each other inside and outside the duel arena, reminiscing about the test battle just now. At this moment, Kale's projection appeared above the duel arena. "There are 36 people who passed, which is beyond my expectations." Kale's projection looked down at the contestants and said calmly, "In that case, let's begin the second round." "The second round, what will happen?" The contestants were filled with anticipation and nervousness, while the audience cheered and applauded enthusiastically. Everything that they had seen today had overturned their understanding of the world. Regardless of who won or lost today, the outcome was not important. What was important was the process of the match, the intense friction between superpowers and those who had surpassed the limits of humans. The rules are also simple and easy to understand. The contestants on the duel arena are free to form teams within 5 minutes, and then they will compete against each other. The losers will be eliminated and the winners will advance. As soon as Kale's words fell, there was an uproar in the audience. The cruel part of this rule was that it would directly eliminate half of the contestants. Who to choose as a team member was the key. Of course, if there were acquaintances, they would naturally take precedence. Now the free selection time begins. When Kale's projection disappeared from the duel arena, a huge 5-minute countdown appeared above the duel arena. The contestants on the duel arena could not stand still and began to look for their teammates to form three-person teams. However, for Alpha Centauri, Modu, and Steven, it was equivalent to skipping the selection process. The four of us, Spider-Man, Ant-Man, Deadpool, and Poison Agent, stared at each other, and one of them was destined to leave. Just as they hesitated, a voice came from the side. "Hey little Spider, don't think I didn't see you." "Mr. Stark." Spider-Man looked at Iron Man in surprise and said excitedly, "I knew that if you came, you would definitely pass the first test. How about you team up with me?" "Were you guys?" Iron Man glanced at the other three. He and Poison Agent were also old acquaintances, and they nodded to each other. "In that case, I will team up with Mr. Stark." Spider-Man clenched his fists excitedly, and Ant-Man looked at him enviously. With Iron Man as his thigh, the second test was basically in the bag. However, they had Poison Agent on their side, which was a good team configuration. On the other side of the duel arena, the Avengers were basically together and were preparing to split up. At this time, someone patted Scarlet Witch on the shoulder. The Scarlet Witch looked back and her beautiful eyes lit up. There were two beautiful and elegant women. One of them was Yu Tong, who she knew. As for the other one, although she didn't know her, she could guess who she was with a woman of this level. Lucy. Since World War II, the woman who first followed Kale, later the president of the unnatural firm, and now the queen of the cow country. "I'm Lucy." Lucy showed a sweet smile. She was wearing a slim-fit sportswear and had her blonde hair tied in two ponytails. She was like a young and beautiful girl. She introduced herself in a friendly manner. "Hello, my mother." Wanda's cheeks were inexplicably stained with 2 shades of pink. "You are one of the sisters of the twins, Miss Wanda. We are short of 2 here. Would you like to join my team?" Lucy's voice was soft and beautiful. She didn't use a scrutinizing gaze, giving people a very comfortable feeling. "Okay." Wanda nodded without thinking. Therefore, before the team competition officially began, 2 nightmare teams appeared on the duel field. One was the Spellcaster team led by Alpha Centauri. The second was the women's team led by Lucy. Alpha Centauri's team was okay. After all, only Alpha Centauri was unique. The latter team's strength could be ranked in the top 8. Quicksilver, who was abandoned by his sister, could only form a team with Illusion and Black Widow. Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Falcon formed another team. Hawkeye went home to rest and hasn't returned yet. He didn't participate in this competition. The relationship between Iron Man and the members of the Avengers was strained. After pulling in Spider-Man, he also joined Black Panther, who unexpectedly came to participate in the competition, forming a team of 2 rich people. 7 elite card apprentices who passed the test, Hellfire, and a black flame horse. The 9 people formed 3 teams. Soon the 5-minute countdown ended. The superpower competition began immediately. Chapter 621. On the bustling duel platform, tens of thousands of meters away, in the watchtower suspended in space outside Earth. Kale's real body was not in the cow country, but in the main hall of the watchtower. Here he was controlling and planning the overall situation and direction of this superpower competition through the main god system. After all, his usual assistant, Yu Tong, had gone to participate in the competition, and Vice had become an illusion. Kale could no longer be a hands-off manager. As for Logan, who did not participate in this competition, he was wearing a black suit and standing beside Kale. He was smoking a cigar while looking at several projection screens in front of Kale. "Master. 36 contestants have been divided into 12 teams on the duel platform. Please give the next order." The main god replied. "Good, very good." Kale nodded. He glanced at the team configuration list sent by the main god system. The team configuration on the list was within his expectations, but the configuration of Lucy's team, it was a little exaggerated. Originally, Lucy and Yu Tong were already ridiculous. Why did they have to pull Wanda in? Did they want to test the strength of the witches, or did they have other ideas? Sometimes. Kale, who had lived for 100 years, still could not understand women's thinking. Logan could not stand it anymore and said, "Lucy, Yu Tong, and one of the twins. Although the team is full of women, it should be the strongest team configuration." The strongest women on Earth were all gathered together. This was really too stable. The strongest team? That's not necessarily the case. Kale shook his head gently, and his eyes fell on Alpha Centauri's team. Lucy's team was made up of top-level superpowers, then Alpha Centauri's team was made up of mysterious spells. Innate superpowers and acquired spells, it was really hard to say which was stronger. In addition, Iron Man, Black Panther, and Spider-Man. This team's uniform labels included Krypton, battle suits, technology, and so on. They represented the current top level of technology on Earth. Even if they were to fight against the previous two teams, they would still have the power to fight. There are also Hellfire, Quicksilver, and Poison Agent. The three teams they represent have many highlights. Since we've formed a team, let's begin the second round of the competition. There's no need for me to step in. Just do as we've agreed. Kale ordered the Lord God. The corners of his mouth curled up. He could not wait to see what kind of situation would occur when heroes collided with each other using different evolution branches. Spells, superpowers, mutations, technology, which one was stronger? Moreover, there were a few people in the duel arena that Kale was very concerned about. This competition is getting more and more interesting. Kale's meaningful words echoed in the spacious and cold hall. This confrontation between the old and new branches was too interesting. We're going to fight Iron Man, which is Mr. Stark, and the others? Dr. Strange Stephen was scared. He was able to pass because of the magic cloak on his body. Now that he was facing the superhero Iron Man, he was really not confident. We're counting on you. Steve's senior Mo stepped forward and patted him on the shoulder. What? Are you kidding me, Ancient One? Stephen looked at Alpha Centauri, dumbfounded. Alpha Centauri was expressionless. No one knew what he was thinking. On the other side of the duel arena. I didn't expect to face the most troublesome team. Spider-Man scratched his head. As the weakest in the team, he was also under unprecedented pressure. He was worried that he would accidentally drag Mr. Stark down. Relax. It's already good that we didn't face Yutong's team. Perform well this time. Iron Man shrugged. He was originally full of curiosity about the magic power of Alpha Centauri's team. This was a good opportunity to test it out. Black Panther said calmly, I'm also very interested in magic. I don't know how it differs from technology. When the two teams were ready, the Lord God system transmitted them to the virtual space and placed the scene screen above the duel arena. On the huge screen, a row of system prompts appeared first. Random battle scene, New York City. No time limit. The base point of the red and blue teams will be set somewhere in New York. One side will first destroy the other side's base, or one side will first wipe out all the members of the other side to achieve the victory condition. The game officially began. Chapter 6:22. As the scenery in front of them changed, Iron Man, Spider-Man, and Black Panther, who were still in the lively duel arena a moment ago, had moved to a research basement in the next moment. What they saw was an advanced and complete engineering bench, equipment and instruments, and a complete supply of electricity and Krypton dual energy. There were glass cabinets placed by the wall of the studio, which stored different models of Iron Man suits. Where is this? Spider-Man looked around blankly, and Black Panther was also surprised. However, since the battle scene was in downtown New York, then the Red Team base, where they were located, must also be located in New York. Isn't this one of my private studios? Iron Man was surprised. He removed the Iron Man mask and went to the console of the studio. He pressed a few buttons on the keyboard, and the host screen immediately logged into the program, and the lights in the studio lit up everywhere. This also happened to verify his words. Mr. Stark, you said this is your private studio? So, we are now in the Stark Industries building? Spider-Man blinked and asked curiously. It's virtual. Black Panther added that the entire scene space here was virtual, and it could be used and destroyed at will. This is indeed my studio, but it's not in Stark Industries, but a private property in the suburbs of New York. Iron Man narrowed his eyes, thought for a moment, and recalled, I remember that this is the private studio I built for Project Ultron half a year ago, but after the Battle of Sokovia, this place was abandoned by me. I didn't expect that this place would become the Red Team's base that we have to defend. Iron Man said this and suddenly remembered something. He looked at the other two solemnly and quickly reminded them, then now, the three sorcerers should have also arrived somewhere in this virtual New York City. Spider-Man and Black Panther tensed up at the same time. Yes, from the moment they arrived here, the game had officially begun. Just as Iron Man said. At this time, in the central street of the virtual New York City, in an ordinary-looking Western church, Ancient One, Sorcerer Mo, and Dr. Strange arrived at the main hall on the second floor of the church. Although it was an ordinary church, there were various strange artifacts inside, which made Mo stunned for a moment and glanced at the main hall to confirm. Isn't this our New York sanctum? Mo was in disbelief. Even the unknown temple was simulated and set up as their base. This meant that the Cal country already knew where the temple was. That man's words are not strange at all. Alpha Centauri smiled faintly. Kale had already noticed the existence of the New York sanctum a few years ago. The artifacts inside, Dr. Strange tried to touch one of the magic tools. After injecting his magic power through the ring, the magic tool immediately glowed with a strange special effect. He said in surprise, "Incredible. Is this really a virtual space? Even existing artifacts can be used normally. That man probably has something like the cauldron of all creation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to restore the New York Holy Palace to its original state." Modu's dark face was extremely serious. Even the isolated New York sanctum was detected. Kale and the Cal country's background was more terrifying than he imagined. Alpha Centauri said faintly, "All right, since we're participating in the competition, we'll follow their rules. As long as we can defend the sanctum and find and defeat those 3 people, or destroy their base, we'll win. There's a protective shield around the New York sanctum. It's hard for ordinary people to recognize this place. We have the absolute advantage of the mages." Modu muttered and looked at the New York City through the second-floor window. "To be honest, it's hard for us to lose even if we want to. In terms of team combat power, they had the invincible Supreme Mage. In terms of defense, the New York Sanctum was originally a shelter for mages. No matter how they looked at it, they were bound to win this competition. So what should we do?" Only Dr. Strange had no clue at all. He just stood aside like a mascot and listened to his master Alpha Centauri and Senior Modu discuss. On the outskirts of New York, in a private basement, Iron Man, Spider-Man, and Black Panther stood in a triangle and discussed tactics. "I don't need to tell you who our opponents are this time." Iron Man leaned on the edge of the workbench, spread his hands and said helplessly, "Especially the nun in their team. I've heard Godfather mention her before. She's a woman that even Godfather treats with caution. If possible, I don't want to face her. If we don't have the confidence to defeat those 3 people head-on, we can only find and destroy their base." Black Panther's brain was analyzing and thinking quickly. Even a 3-year-old child knows this. Iron Man said disapprovingly, "The problem is how to find their base before they do." Spider-Man said, "Our base is set up in Mr. Stark's home field, so the other party's base should also be set up in their members' home field. They're mages, so will it be a place like a New York church?" "It's very possible." Black Panther's eyes lit up. "It's useless to know it's a church," Iron Man said bluntly, "not to mention there are dozens of large and small churches in New York. Besides, I don't think satellites or scanning instruments can detect the location of their church base." "I almost forgot. The other party has magic." Spider-Man slapped his forehead and groaned, "We can't beat them with just the 3 of us." "Huh." Iron Man froze for a moment and said to himself, "By the way, since the 3 of us alone can't beat them, then we can add more help." "Help?" Spider-Man looked at Iron Man strangely. "How could the 3 of them have any help?" "You mean?" Black Panther quickly understood and looked at the workbench and the Mark battle suit placed in the studio. "Little Spider, thank you for your reminder. I almost forgot that we represent scientific civilization, that is, the scientific creations of this era can become our strength." Iron Man stood up, put on the iron mask and said excitedly, "Our home field is not just this small basement, but the whole New York City is our home field." "What did I just say?" Spider-Man looked confused and didn't understand what inspiration he gave to Mr. Stark. Black Panther patted Spider-Man on the shoulder and nodded, "I understand what Stark means. Yes, our biggest weapon is the scientific power here. If we don't take advantage of this advantage and go head-on, it will be a disgrace to science." Iron Man clenched his fists hard, his eyes flashing white, and said in a deep voice, "According to the information I know about the other team, the combat power of the 3 of us, and the battle scene here, I have thought of a plan. Maybe we can defeat their plan." Chapter 623. On the platform of the duel arena in the Cal country. The 3-dimensional projection screen of the virtual New York City, as well as the cursor positions of the red and blue team players, were displayed above the duel arena. The contestants and the audience at the scene held their breaths as their attention fell on the projection screen. At this moment, the camera suddenly pulled to a certain area. There were 3 cursors there, 2 blue and 1 red. They were constantly closing in and it looked like they were about to officially meet. Someone is going to take the lead and it's still more than 1 against 1. In the central hall of the watchtower, Kale narrowed his eyes slightly. He had a god's view, and after seeing the familiar figures corresponding to the cursors, the corners of his mouth quietly curled up. Let me take a good look at the awareness and strength that you have displayed in this competition. Virtual New York City, Stark Industries headquarters. On the open-air balcony on the top floor, Iron Man was sitting on a chair, overlooking the empty city alone. He was listening to the dynamic music on the radio while basking in the warm sun, as if he was unaware of the impending danger. Sha sha sha. Sparks spun into a wheel on the open space of the balcony, and the portal opened. Ancient One and Mage Mo came here one after the other. You're finally here. I've been sitting here for almost 3 minutes. Iron Man was not surprised at all. He looked at the two people in front of him and said indifferently, since the two of you are traveling together, then the other one, Dr. Strange, should be staying at the base to guard his home. You guessed right. Alpha Centauri nodded generously and stepped forward. Mo's face was solemn. He looked around and cautiously reminded Mage Supreme he might be plotting something. Otherwise he wouldn't take the initiative to expose his position alone. Don't worry. There is no one else hiding within a kilometer of here, Alpha Centauri said indifferently. Mo frowned and stared at Iron Man. Did the other 2 members of your team stay at their base? Isn't it too arrogant to let you deal with us alone? You can say whatever you want. My goal is only to delay you all. Iron Man simply spread out his hands and followed his words. A few kilometers away from the headquarters of Stark Industries, a building was damaged by a bomb. The rumbling sound spread far and wide, and black smoke rose toward the blue sky. Those are your people. Mo looked back and saw this scene and his pupils shrank. He and Alpha Centauri were here and Dr. Strange was guarding the New York Sanctum. This explosion was obviously caused by the Iron Man team. The destruction of the building was naturally to search for the temple's base. Although the Holy Sanctum had Dr. Strange in their base, he was not very reliable. Sorcerer Supreme, Mo looked at Alpha Centauri anxiously, waiting for her next command. Go. Alpha Centauri nodded. Yes. Mo bowed slightly, then jumped directly toward the balcony. His magic boots stepped on the air, and golden magic lines appeared on the soles of his boots, making him feel as if he was walking on flat ground. Just like that, he kicked the air and rushed toward the explosion area. Iron Man did not stop him and let Mo leave. Although he seemed casual and lazy, he was actually paying attention to Alpha Centauri. When it was confirmed that Alpha Centauri had stayed behind and Mo rushed to the explosion area, he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. If it was the other way around, it would be really difficult. Fortunately, everything was going according to plan. At this time, Alpha Centauri's flat voice came. You specifically appeared here just to delay me. You didn't use the time stone to see the future, did you? Iron Man's body trembled. Fortunately, he was wearing the Iron Man suit and no one noticed his gaffe. He had heard Godfather mention the time stone, and the time stone that could predict the future was now embedded in the necklace worn by Alpha Centauri. If the other party really used the time stone, then there was no need to compete in this competition, just admit defeat. That's not necessary. Alpha Centauri looked down at the necklace and said, Ever since you made that prototype armor, became Iron Man and founded the Avengers, I have been secretly observing you from time to time. With your temperament, you're probably doing something now. And delaying our team's strongest combat power is the limit of what you can do. As expected of the Earth's Guardian that Godfather has mentioned many times. Iron Man took a deep breath, raised his hands and the palm engine glowed with laser light. As you said, I bet everything I have, I will delay you here. Then let's try. Alpha Centauri's left hand was still behind his back. He raised his right hand forward, and the golden magic pattern formed a solid weapon, which was caught by his fair right hand. On the other side, 5 kilometers away from the Stark building, in the virtual New York sky, Spider-Man was carrying a backpack full of explosives and a pack of explosives in his left hand. He was leaving the destroyed church building, swinging high between the buildings, and heading to the second church nearby. Spider-Man pulled the spider silk and was turning to the back of the building. Suddenly, a black figure fell from the sky. It was Mo. He held a golden whip condensed from sparks in his right hand, and his robe fluttered as he whipped it at Spider-Man. At the critical moment, Spider-Man threw the pack of explosives he was carrying. The sparks whip fell on the pack of explosives, causing a powerful explosion that shattered the glass windows of the building next to it. Spider-Man swooped down, but from the thick smoke, Mo's left hand turned into a protective shield, his right hand held the whip, and his boots stepped on the air to chase after him. Okay. Spider-Man landed on the spacious road and looked back. Mo had just returned to the ground from the air. I'm curious, were you running in the air just now? How did you do it? Spider-Man's pupils dilated slightly, and he couldn't help but ask curiously. I can do it with my heart. Emodu looked at Spider-Man and said coldly, where is the other person? Is he in your base or is he planning something? Try to feel it with your heart, maybe it will work. Spider-Man teased. Emodu snorted coldly and continued to whip forward. Spider-Man reacted quickly. He raised his left hand and spat out fireproof spider silk to wrap around the whip. He pulled hard, and the mutated force was so great that it directly pulled Emodu back. Emodu's feet stepped on the air in time and landed on the ground. This time, he finally looked at Spider-Man seriously and realized that the other party's strength was not to be underestimated. Again. Spider-Man hooked his finger. He looked like he was going to blow up all the churches, but in fact he only had one mission, which was to attract the hatred of Emodu in front of him. Yes. Iron Man held back the Ancient One, while Spider-Man held back Emodu. This was the prelude to their plan. As for the aftermath, it was Black Panther who played it. Virtual New York City, the top secret base of the United States military. Black Panther tore the steel protective door with his golden claws and broke into the military base. He came to the most hidden control room in the depths of the military base. On the door was written, Nuclear Weapons Military Base Unauthorized Entry. Chapter 624. Stark is right, the nuclear weapon activation device is here. Black Panther's eyes flickered with a glimmer. He stretched out his 10 fingers, and the hard special protective door was easily torn apart like a piece of paper. In front of Earth's hardest metal material, all of Earth's defensive measures seemed too pale and powerless. Black Panther entered the control room, turned on the lights, came to the console, inserted the intrusion USB flash drive given by Stark, put away the vibranium's slender fingers, and quickly entered the deciphering code on the keyboard. Not everyone who came to the control room could control the nuclear device. For the military weapons of this superpower, the level of encryption and protection was definitely the highest in the world. Even with the help of Iron Man and the top genius Black Panther to carry out the operation, it would take some time to decipher the console's protection. During this time, it would depend on whether Iron Man and Spider-Man could hold off Alpha Centauri. Fortunately, there was one thing that they had an absolute advantage, and it was also a big key to whether they could win this game. That was conceptual thinking. Alpha Centauri, the guardians of Earth, because they had guarded Earth for so long, they had formed a fixed mindset that everything was more focused on defense. Therefore, in any case, the Alpha Centauri team would choose to leave 1 or 2 members in their base to defend. In this way, only 2 of them could really take the initiative to attack. What they never expected was that the Iron Man team didn't intend to attack the base from the beginning. They directly abandoned their base and went all out to fight for the future of this game. There should be no problem with Peter. The most important thing is whether Stark can hold off the strongest Alpha Centauri of the opponent team. This is the most important part. Black Panther took a deep breath, his hands quickly tapped on the keyboard, and after pressing the confirm button, a long progress bar appeared on the screen. Countdown to the final deciphering, 07:59, 8 minutes. Virtual New York City, Stark Industries headquarters building, top floor rooftop. Iron Man slowly fell backward, and with a clang sound the steel body fell to the ground, and the light on its chest that symbolized life extinguished. Ancient One was expressionless, his left hand was still behind him, and his right hand was still in a pushing posture. What the hell is going on? Tani's transparent soul body floated in the air, looking in disbelief at the fallen body wearing the Iron Man armor. It was a suit that could defend against rocket launchers, 10,000-meter ice, deep-sea pressure, and other outer layers. It was a suit that could carry enough krypton energy, small artillery shells, laser charging, and other weapons. It was a suit that could fight against top creatures or top technological creations. However, Alpha Centauri just gave it a gentle push. He had lost. He had lost. Whether Tani could accept it or not, this was the truth in front of him. He finally understood why Godfather had mentioned the woman in front of him so many times. She was the top guardian sorcerer of Earth. She was really strange and extremely powerful. Alpha Centauri said slowly, Mr. Stark, it's time to reveal your plan. Otherwise, I'll go and find them one by one. Mage, what are you talking about? I lost, but Iron Man hasn't lost yet. Tani's soul calmed down and looked at Alpha Centauri. I said it. Even if I have to bet everything, I will stop you here. Although I don't want to use it, I can only use that move. Alpha Centauri seemed to sense something and looked back. From the distant horizon, dozens of black spots appeared. The black spots were getting bigger and bigger. When they got closer, they realized that they were Mark armors. The engines on the hands and feet spat out flames as they hovered in the air above Stark Industries. These Mark models were different. Some were born for close combat, some were anti-Hulk armors from the first 2 or 3 generations to the current dozen generations. Their white eyes locked onto Alpha Centauri. The scene was quite spectacular. Mark armors, a long-awaited family reunion. Tani's soul put his hands together and smiled. This time it's no longer mass-produced, but a limited edition. They don't have souls, so they won't be affected by your move. Before the start of this battle, I set up the system program in advance. When I activate the device or when my armor stops functioning, they will all go out and launch an endless attack on you. Old Antique. Take a good look at the new power of this era. With the words of Tani's soul, dozens of Mark armors fired laser beams at the same time and collectively blasted towards the Ancient One on the rooftop. Boom. The top floor of the Stark Industries building collapsed and exploded. The power of the explosion and the dazzling light could be clearly seen from more than 10 kilometers away. What's that? Spider-Man looked up at the white light on the top of the building in the distance. At this time, a whip was thrown towards him. Fortunately, he reacted quickly and dodged it. Damn it. Mo.Do looked at Spider-Man with slight annoyance. This guy's physique was superhuman, and his reaction was much faster than his. He could always avoid the attack. Moreover, Spider-Man didn't want to fight him. He just tried to stall for time, which made him both depressed and passive. New York Sanctum. Doctor Strange in his magic cloak sat alone in the spacious hall on the 2nd floor, staring at the clock on the wall in a daze. No one is coming. Am I just going to sit here for this battle? Doctor Strange began to doubt his life. Suddenly, the dark red magic cloak floated up and dragged him downstairs. What are you doing now? Doctor Strange was pulled back and walked down the stairs. He came to the 1st floor and finally stopped in front of a huge ancient cauldron. This is the cauldron of all things. Doctor Strange blinked and recognized this artifact. This was a very important artifact for the sorcerers to protect Earth. It could be used to perceive potential dangers and peek into worldly things. Right, even if I don't participate in the battle, I can at least take a look. Doctor Strange thought for a while and reached out to grab the cauldron of all things. He calmed down and injected his magic power. After a while, Alpha Centauri's figure appeared in the cauldron of all things. She was standing in the dilapidated building of Stark Industries. As she waved her hands, the Mark battle suits that flew towards her were shattered into pieces by a mysterious force midway. Sorcerer Supreme is fighting with Iron Man? What about the others? Doctor Strange whispered to himself. The image in the cauldron of all things changed and showed Spider-Man and Sorcerer Mo.Do fighting. That Spider-Man is really something. This is the first time I've seen Brother Mo.Do in such a sorry state. Doctor Strange looked at it and couldn't help but laugh. Then, the image in the cauldron of all things changed again. The figure of Black Panther appeared and he was standing in front of the control panel of the nuclear weapon. This is... Doctor Strange's eyes widened. He seemed to have unintentionally seen through the other team's plan. Chapter 625. Virtual New York City Military Headquarters, Nuclear Weapons Control Room. The Black Panther stared at the control panel without blinking. The countdown had reached 0:03:02. There were only 3 minutes left. Please hold on a little longer. The Black Panther was cheering for his teammates who were holding back the 2 enemy mages. Suddenly he heard a strange rustling sound. He quickly turned around and saw sparks spinning into a wheel at the door of the control room. Then a boot stepped out from it. You are. The Black Panther's eyes turned cold. His body tensed up, ready for battle. He raised his hands. His 10 fingers revealed sharp, vibrantly golden fingernails. They shone under the light from the ceiling. Draped in a dark red cloak and wearing a mage uniform, Doctor Strange walked out of the portal. After arriving at the underground control room, he waved his hand and closed the magic portal to the New York Holy Temple behind him. Black Panther, right? What are you doing here instead of guarding your team's base? Doctor Strange narrowed his eyes. Naturally, he knew what this place was. That was why he took the risk to leave the New York Holy Temple and come here. His intuition and rationality told him that if he did not come here, something terrible would happen. Nothing much. I'm just letting you mages experience the power of science for yourselves. As soon as the Black Panther finished speaking, he suddenly launched an attack. He pounced forward like a leopard, his sharp, vibrantly golden fingernails swiping at Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange subconsciously shrank back. However, the reaction speed of a normal human was too slow in front of the Black Panther's inhuman speed. He could not escape the attack range in time. Seeing that Doctor Strange was about to be injured, a corner of the magic cloak on his back lifted forward. It happened to bind half of the Black Panther's right arm. "Well done," Doctor Strange shouted. His hands formed a spell, and a golden magic whip appeared and lashed at the Black Panther's chest. However, as sparks flew everywhere, the dark armor was not damaged at all. Not even a white mark was left on it. What kind of armor is this? Doctor Strange was confused. Unable to retract his right hand, the Black Panther continued to grab Doctor Strange's neck with his left hand. However, the magic cloak behind the other party wrapped around his entire hand and wrist in time. Before the Black Panther could do anything else, the magic cloak went around Doctor Strange's body and surrounded him. It even tied up his legs. This position, the Black Panther and Doctor Strange were almost face to face, chest to chest. They were wrapped in the magic cloak like a cocoon. The two people who were tied together fell to the floor and rolled back and forth madly. "Your cape is really annoying." The Black Panther tore at the tough magic cape, but the material of the cape could not be torn apart even by vibranium's sharp claws. "Same here," Doctor Strange hurriedly replied. The Black Panther could not do anything to his cape, and he could not do anything to his opponent's vibranium battle suit. "It's just my limbs. I still have my head. Let's see how you deal with it." When the Black Panther thought of this, it used its head to headbutt Doctor Strange, causing him to feel dizzy. As expected, engaging in close combat with a warrior was an extremely unwise choice for a mage. Not giving the Black Panther a chance to smash its head a second time, Doctor Strange grabbed the Black Panther with both hands and used his magic to pull it up. In the next moment, their souls left their cloaked bodies and floated in the air of the control room. "What's going on? There are two of me?" Inside the Black Panther battle suit, Chala looked at the body on the floor in surprise, and then looked up at Steven, who was also floating. "Didn't you want to show us the power of technology? Then I'll show you the power of magic." Steven's soul threw a punch and hit Chala's soul on the nose, sending him flying a few meters away and crashing into the control panel instrument, causing the chair in the real world to shake. He took a deep breath, clenched his fists, and put on a boxing pose that was not considered a trademark. "Now, without the battle suit, you can't suppress me in close combat." "Then let's try." Chala's soul rushed out of the control panel and pushed Steven's soul to the second basement floor. The two ignored the buildings and the ground and wrestled together in the military base headquarters. This different kind of soul battle was also displayed in front of the contestants and audience outside through the projection screen. Not only that, there were two other projection screens on the scene, corresponding to the battle between the Ancient One and the Mark Army, as well as the battle between Mage Mo and Spider-Man. There were no shouts or cheers on the platform. Everyone's eyes were wide open, immersed in the battle in the virtual space, unable to extricate themselves. After all, it was really exciting. Unlike the special effects in movies, it was a real battle of superpowers. The fierce collision of technology and magic, the exchange of conspiracy and strength directly subverted the cognition of countless humans. In the central control room of the Watchtower, Logan looked at the overwhelming battles in the three places and sighed. So strong. All six of them are so strong. Although Spider-Man and Doctor Strange's combat skills are still a little rusty, I may not be able to match their strength and potential. People really have to admit that they're old. Kale smiled. This first game was a veritable battle of quality. What I didn't expect was that Tani used the former Mark Army in this battle and found his original intention of becoming Iron Man. This is the most rare thing. Kale's focus was still on Alpha Centauri and Tani's side. Whether or not they could stall Alpha Centauri was the key to victory for the Iron Man team. Because Alpha Centauri was not only strong, but also strangely strong and had the ability to create miracles. "Master, who do you think will win in the end?" Logan asked. "It's hard to say." Kale shook his head gently and his eyes fell on the screen, on Alpha Centauri's calm face. That was Alpha Centauri, Sorcerer Supreme, Guardian of the Earth, and the founder of the Kamartaj Sorcerer clan. So far she had not shown the strength she should have. Virtual New York City, Stark Industries headquarters. As if driving away flies, Alpha Centauri's palm appeared with golden magical patterns. With a wave of his hand, a Mark armor exploded in the air. In less than a few minutes, dozens of well-equipped Mark armors were left in the air with difficulty. Tani's soul floated on the side. He could only watch and could not do anything about it. "You can't drag it on any longer," Alpha Centauri said with a smile. "That's hard to say." Tani's soul laughed. "Do you know why I chose to fight in the Stark building?" Alpha Centauri seemed to have sensed something and looked down at the soles of his feet. Half a second later, inside the Stark headquarters, the time bomb set up early in the morning detonated. The explosion was as loud as thunder, and the entire skyscraper collapsed like an avalanche. The ground of New York City trembled because of the explosion. When the dust settled, a Martian portal appeared in the ruins filled with black smoke. Alpha Centauri walked out of it unscathed. This is it. Tani Sol's face was a little ugly. This was the unsolvable part of sorcerers. As long as there was a dangerous situation in the real world, they could hide in the mirror space. With this trick, sorcerers on Earth were almost invincible. Chapter 626. Tani had seen Kale perform magic teleportation many times, and the mirror space once or twice, so from the beginning of this game, he understood that it was basically impossible to win by defeating all the members of the other team. After all, the other three were mages. Therefore, their only possible victory condition was to destroy the other team's base. How to destroy the other team's base? Without knowing where the other team's base was, and under the premise of the mage's other abilities, the Iron Man trio could only gamble with the most powerful technological weapon in the contemporary world. Yes, that was nuclear weapons. As long as the nuclear weapons were detonated in the center of New York, the Iron Man trio's base would be affected because it was located in the suburbs. And before that, as long as the other team's base was destroyed before theirs, they would have the priority to win this game. This was Iron Man Tony Stark's entire plan from the beginning to the present. So far, the plan had been successfully completed, and now there was only one last step left. That was to detonate the nuclear weapons. The prelude of the chessboard has been completed, it should be about time. The next step is up to you, Black Panther T'Challa. Tani's soul said in his heart. Then, the three surviving Mark armors in the air, like moths, swooped down towards Alpha Centauri standing in the ruins. Military headquarters basement. The bodies of Doctor Strange and Black Panther were still tied together by the magic cloak, lying across the floor. Stephen's soul was lying in the corner, looking at the ceiling helplessly. Let's fight. T'Challa's soul stood coldly in the middle of the hall. Even without his physique and armor, his fighting skills were still there, and it was not something that Stephen, a surgeon, could compare to. In this battle of souls, Black Panther T'Challa won. The control instrument made a beeping sound, and T'Challa's soul looked back, only to see that the countdown on the screen had completely ended, entering the interface to give instructions. The decryption was over. Hey, hurry up. Tell me how to return to my original body. T'Challa's soul shouted at Stephen's soul. Don't think about it. I won't tell you, we're at most tied now. Stephen's soul turned away and refused directly. Up to you. Through the battle just now, I already know that even a spiritual body can subtly affect the real world. A smile appeared on the dark face of T'Challa's soul. His soul floated towards the control panel. Under the bewildered gaze of Steve's soul, T'Challa's soul clenched his left fist, concentrated his spirit and power, and hit a red button on the control panel. Gotcha. The red button pressed down gently. This time he's going to die. T'Challa's soul smirked. The virtual New York City was in a mess. Spider-Man leaned on the street lamp tiredly and waved at Mo, who was chasing him. He gasped and said, "Well, can you stop for a while? Why don't we take a break before we continue?" "Stop your head." Mo was furious. He swung his magic whip and magic shield forward. Suddenly he felt a strange feeling above his head. He looked up and saw a giant rocket rising from the distance. It adjusted its direction near the atmosphere and finally fell towards the central city where they were. What is that? Mo's pupils contracted. His eyes reflected the approaching fire arrow, and a creepy aura of death surged into his heart. Nothing, just a nuclear bomb. At this point, Spider-Man no longer hid it and spread his hands towards Mo. Nuclear bomb? Mo's face changed greatly. Anyone who lived in the modern era knew what a nuclear bomb meant. It was the ultimate technological product that ended World War II in modern times. It was the strategic weapon of a superpower. It was something that could truly destroy human civilization on Earth. And now, a nuclear bomb was coming towards them. Mo's body trembled. He touched the magic armament in his hand. He quickly drew circles in the air, opened the portal of the mirror dimension and escaped into it. Spider-Man didn't stop Mo from leaving, nor did he follow him into the mirror dimension to take refuge. He let go of the hand holding the street lamp and lay on the road, waiting for the arrival of the nuclear bomb. "It's over. You can rest now, Mr. Stark," Spider-Man muttered to himself. on the original site of the Stark Industries headquarters above the ruins. With the annihilation of the Mark armors and the destruction of the Mark armors, they had also completed their mission. After taking care of all the Mark armors, Alpha Centauri frowned slightly. He looked up at the sky and saw the giant fire arrow loaded with nuclear weapons falling towards the New York City area where they were. There were only less than 10 seconds left before the detonation. This game should be over. Tani's soul floated in the air. He looked at the nuclear bomb in the sky and then looked at Alpha Centauri next to him. He said with emotion, "Ancient One. You are really strong, ridiculously strong. You are like Godfather standing at the top of the world. But when it comes to strategy and awareness, we are a little better than you." Let's see. This is an attack of a technological civilization. The voice of Tani's soul entered Alpha Centauri's ears and also passed on to the contestants and audience watching the game. As the rocket and nuclear bomb continued to approach, the suffocating sense of oppression could be clearly felt by everyone. Nuking New York, this was really a madman's plan. Many national leaders watching the game exited the live broadcast platform while cursing. They ordered the general to quickly move the nuclear weapons room and add a few more layers of protection. In the central hall of the watchtower, Tani and the others are going to win. Logan held his breath and said to Kale, "Not necessarily." Kale still shook his head. As long as Alpha Centauri was there, no one dared to say that they would win. This was the deterrent power of the Sorcerer Supreme. But the taste of a nuclear bomb, I really miss it. Kale smiled indifferently and continued to watch the screen, the nuclear bomb that was about to touch the surface. In the virtual New York. A nuclear explosion is about to happen. Escape into your mirror dimension. Tani's soul looked straight at Alpha Centauri not far away. They could escape, but their base could not. The nuclear explosion did not need to kill any of them, it only needed to destroy the opponent's base. This game of chess was about to be lost. But Alpha Centauri showed no signs of opening the portal. Her face was as calm as ever, without any expression. When the rocket was about a few hundred meters away from the surface, Alpha Centauri suddenly opened her hands. The surrounding ground and buildings trembled slightly in accordance with her movements. Could it be? No way, how is this possible? Tani's soul widened his eyes in disbelief. Ha! Alpha Centauri pressed down with both hands. The city within a radius of 10,000 meters, or rather the entire New York City, was like a Rubik's Cube being played within her hands. All the buildings with her as the center sank into the ground. A deeper use of ultimate magic in the mirror dimension. Subverting reality. Chapter 627. Facing the nuclear bomb that was about to explode, Alpha Centauri finally made her move. She opened her hands and released spells. Her eyes gradually turned black, and her body glowed with a heart-palpitating power. It was a power that was a level higher than all the energy possessed by Earth. It was similar to the infinite primordial stone and contained the mysterious space law of the universe. How is this possible? Tani's soul trembled as he looked at Alpha Centauri, who was lifted up by a three-dimensional platform. The space where the virtual New York City was located was like a Rubik's Cube. The buildings and streets were like an internal lattice that was twisted and transformed by an invisible hand at will. Countless buildings sank into the ground and were replaced by models of the mirror space. The high-rise models were woven into a huge net and wrapped around the falling nuclear bomb rocket. One person and one city against the most powerful technological weapon of Earth's modern civilization. It was a veritable ultimate collision of magic and technology. This scene was difficult to describe in words. Perhaps decades later, it would still be deeply imprinted in the minds of the people who watched this game. The next moment, boom. In the layers of intertwined high-rise buildings, the nuclear bomb inside detonated and the surrounding buildings collapsed inch by inch from the inside out. Alpha Centauri was still expressionless. The darkness in her eyes slightly reached the corner of her eyes. Standing on the floating platform, she raised her hands again. The super-strong aftermath that was enough to sweep through most of New York City was once again isolated by a new round of building space before it could spread out. Countless buildings were annihilated and collapsed. The space distorted irregularly again and again until the last wisp of smoke dissipated from the detonation of the nuclear bomb. New York City returned to its usual calm. Tani's soul floated in the air and stared blankly at Alpha Centauri on the floating platform. After the nuclear bomb baptism, all the buildings and streets in New York City were still intact except for the Stark Industries headquarters. He wasn't the only one who was stunned. On the platform of the duel outside and on the live broadcast platform of Skynet, everyone who witnessed this shocking scene was stunned. She really took the nuclear bomb. This was simply a fantasy. To be able to do this, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call her a god. None of the contestants or the audience cheered or applauded. Everyone just quietly looked up at the Ancient One in the yellow robe. This battle must be Alpha Centauri's battle to become a god. No one would question that. In the virtual New York City, Alpha Centauri bathed in the sunlight. The black light in her eyes faded away as she looked down at Tani's soul. Do you want to continue? What's there to continue? Tani's soul floated up to Alpha Centauri and smiled bitterly. Even our only trump card was easily cracked by you. There's no need to continue this match. We've lost, completely lost. He shrugged and said dejectedly, apart from Godfather, I can't think of any other way to defeat you. The distance between you and me is simply too great. That's not true. Ancient One shook his head, looked directly at Tony's soul and said softly, in this contest I won't be able to defeat you easily. I do see your awareness and I'm quite happy that Earth has more heroes like you who can protect it. This way, even if one day I'm not here, you can shoulder the heavy responsibility of Earth's guardians. Alpha Centauri's voice became inaudible as she said the last sentence, as if she was saying it only to herself. After Iron Man, Spider-Man and Black Panther's battle plan failed and they successively admitted defeat in the virtual space, this battle of the century of magic technology ended with Alpha Centauri, Mo2 and Doctor Strange's victory. Alpha Centauri's trio advanced. When they returned to the duel arena, they were greeted with deafening applause and cheers. This match was far from being described as wonderful. It was like a lesson for the humans of Earth. A lesson called the supremacy of magic. The applause and cheers lasted for a full 10 seconds before they stopped. Then, Kale's huge three-dimensional projection reappeared in the sky above the duel arena. What a memorable match. Kale's projection sighed from the bottom of his heart. He didn't expect that Tani would not only find his original intention as Iron Man, but also gamble with all his awareness. What surprised him even more was that Alpha Centauri would actually go to that extent, even at the expense of exposing her hidden power. Alpha Centauri, I'm looking forward to competing with you. Kale's projection took a deep look at Alpha Centauri. Alpha Centauri returned a smile. No matter what, she was similar to a demigod existence, and her emotions were not written on her face. Let's cut the crap. Let's start the second round of the team competition. Lord God, I'll let you draw the second round. After Kale's projection disappeared, the Lord God's drawing panel popped up. As the pinwheel spun rapidly, the pointer finally stopped at number 2. On the second round of the competition was Team Blue. The team members were Lucy Yu Tong and Wanda the Scarlet Witch. Wow! The audience, which had finally quieted down, once again erupted into a huge wave of cheers. The first round was a death team and now there was another death team? Although team number 2 was full of beautiful women, many people knew that the 3 of them were from the Cow country, and among the contestants, their strength was firmly in the top 8. This was a true death team. Very well, let's welcome the next team of victims. As the pinwheel continued to spin, the pointer finally stopped at number 11. On the 11th, the second round of the competition was Team Red. The team members were Black 1, Black 2 and Black 3. This name was obviously a code name. The contestants and the audience looked at the corner of the duel arena with pity. There were 3 mysterious people in black cloaks whose faces could not be seen clearly. Later, I'll show you the same power as that woman Alpha Centauri. The leader of the team, Black 1, narrowed his eyes. His cold eyes scanned Lucy and the other 2 through the cloak. Looking at the team members of team number 11, Alpha Centauri frowned slightly. Noticing her strangeness, Mo2 took a step forward and whispered, "What's wrong, Sorcerer Supreme?" "Nothing." Alpha Centauri retracted her gaze and shook her head. "Watch the second round carefully later." "Yes." Although they did not know the reason, Mo2 and Doctor Strange nodded solemnly. On the watchtower. "Master." The 3 people in team number 11 seem a little strange. Logan said cautiously. "Yes. I've noticed it long ago. They all have the aura of the dark dimension." Kale smiled indifferently. How could he forget the power of the dark dimension? After all, Superman's avatar had suffered a loss from the dark dimension. Dark dimension? Logan was a little surprised. Do you want to cancel the competition? The virtual space provided for the contestants to fight was, in fact, a combination of the mirror space and the two-dimensional virtual technology. If there was interference from other dimensions and directly attacked Lucy and the others? Don't worry. So what if it's the dark dimension? You're underestimating Lucy and the others. Kale smiled and did not care about it. With the team combination of Lucy, Yutong, and Wanda, not to mention the underlings of the Dark Dimension, even if the real Lord behind the scenes came, it would be difficult. Chapter 628. The second round of the team competition has officially begun. Under the prompt of the main god system, Team 2, which Lucy was in, and Team 11, which the mysterious cloaked man was in, all 6 of them disappeared from the arena and went to the virtual battlefield of the second round. The projection screen suspended above the arena showed a large island surrounded by a vast ocean. There were volcanoes, forests, lakes, and grasslands. There were also many wild animals living on the island. Random battle scene, primitive island. No time limit. The bases of the red and blue teams were set up on both sides of the island. When one team defeated all the members of the other team or destroyed the enemy's base, the winning condition would be met. The competition had officially begun. Team 11 landed in the valley at the end of the island. The leader of the cloaked man, codenamed Black One, looked at the prompt given by the system and the red spire built as the team's base. He could not help but be overjoyed. The rules were different from the previous round. This time the base was no longer hidden. This was a great thing for them. They knew where the opponent's base was from the beginning. For a mage who mastered teleportation and spatial mirror spells, this was simply a heavenly advantage. No matter how strong the opponent was, as long as they hid in the mirror space, bypassed the enemy members and directly destroyed the base. For a mage who could use teleportation, a large island was like a small house. Once the door was opened, they could go wherever they wanted. As long as they controlled the spatial distance, they could create a numerical disadvantage and attack with numbers. Yes. The 3 members of Team 11 were all mages. To be more precise, they were dark mages who had once studied under Alpha Centauri but had now betrayed their master and fallen into the dark dimension. Codenamed Black One, his real name was Cassius. He was once a student of Alpha Centauri. The other 2, codenamed Black 2 and Black 3, were the best of Cassius's subordinates. This time they chose to hide their identities and participate in the competition for 2 reasons. First, the generous rewards prepared by the Cow Country. Second, they wanted to see the current state of the Ancient One with their own eyes. That woman, was she still the impenetrable supreme mage from before? The great master behind the dark dimension said that without his permission, forcibly borrowing and absorbing the power of darkness would seriously corrode one's body and soul. That woman is probably riddled with holes by now. Cassius collected his thoughts and nodded to his subordinates. His left hand opened the skin of his cloak, revealing the finger with the hanging ring, while his right hand drew circles in the air in front of him. Soon, Mars spun into a wheel and a portal to the mirror dimension opened. This familiar scene of creating a magic portal once again caused an uproar in the audience outside the virtual space. One must know that the Alpha Centauri team had just used this trick. Who would have thought that the contestants from team number 11 would also use this trick? Why were there so many strange magicians around these days? The Ancient One? Are they also our people? Dr. Strange's eyes widened as he couldn't help but exclaim. Only the 3 of them from the Kamartaj mage clan would be participating in this event. This was something he knew from the beginning. But why? Don't talk nonsense. Emodu's tan face was ashen. He clenched his fists and stared coldly at the 3 dark mages on the screen. What do you mean, our people? They're just a bunch of lackeys who have fallen into the darkness. Seeing that those people were also using the mirror dimension, Emodu finally understood why Mage Supreme had asked him to pay attention to this competition. It turned out that the traitors of the dark dimension were all here. Seeing that his senior brother Emodu's emotions were unstable, Dr. Strange became even more suspicious. This superpower competition might even involve some of Kamartaj's past and old friends. Be quiet and watch the competition. Alpha Centauri's face was indifferent as he glanced at the 2 of them. Dr. Strange and Emodu immediately kept quiet out of fear as their attention returned to the projection screen. Inside the virtual island, Cassius and his 2 subordinates were cautious and cunning. They first entered the mirror dimension, then opened a portal to the other side of the large island, where the opponent's base was located. However, when the 3 dark mages arrived at the mirror dimension of Lucy's team, they were completely stunned by the scene in front of them. No one could be seen on the other side of the island, and it was extremely strange. The sun was clearly shining here, but the temperature was below 0, and no animals stayed in this area. A huge iceberg stretched across the end of the island, the light blue ice surface shining with sunlight. If one came close, they would be able to see the core of the iceberg, which was 10 meters deep inside the ice, freezing the spire of the blue team's base. They didn't leave any members to guard the base, but simply sealed the base in ice? Cassius was stunned. You can't play like this, right? Can't you afford to play like this? Black 3 tried to walk towards the iceberg of the frozen spire. As a result, before he could get close to the iceberg, his shoes were frozen by the overflowing white air. A thin layer of frost condensed on his shoes. He was so scared that he hurriedly retreated back to Cassius. Boss, this iceberg isn't an ordinary iceberg. It's difficult to even get close to it, let alone destroy it. Even if we use our whips together, it'll probably take a few hours. Black 3 quickly judged. Let me try. Black 2 didn't believe it. He displayed a sparkling whip, fiercely whipping the surface of the iceberg, leaving only a white mark on the surface. The sparks hadn't splashed yet, but they were frozen in the air by the cold air, falling to the ground and becoming ice dregs. This iceberg was not only ridiculously hard, but also ridiculously low in temperature. The corner of Black 3's mouth twitched slightly and he corrected, I was wrong. Even if we spend a few hours, we won't be able to destroy this iceberg. Cassius fell into silence, staring blankly at the huge iceberg with his 2 men. If only they knew. The iceberg created by Lucy, even Igu of the deity clan couldn't do anything to it after spending a few years. He didn't know if he would feel better. Boss, since they're not here, where did they go? Black 2 looked around, scratching his head and asked. Cassius woke up from a dream. He turned around abruptly, his cold eyes crossing the dense forest, looking in the direction of his base. Where else could they go? Naturally to their base. Damn it, we've been tricked. Cassius gritted his teeth, freezing his base. The strategy they had originally thought of, and the initiative they had already held at the beginning, were all broken. At the moment they only had 2 choices. One was to protect their base while defeating all the members of the other team. The other was to surrender and admit defeat. A group of women. Come with me, fight with them. Chapter 629. On the grass next to the lake in the middle of the virtual island. Lucy, Yutong, and Wanda hunted a wild boar when they passed by the forest. They didn't go to the front line of Red Square's base. Instead, they chose to come here and skin the wild boar's carcass in the lake. Just as the spectators outside were in high spirits, secretly looking forward to it, thinking that Lucy's team was going to set up a trap. They set up camp by the lake, found firewood, and sprinkled cumin on the wild boar meat. Barbecue on the spot, yes. Lucy and the other 2 seemed to have forgotten that they were still in a superpower competition. They barbecued by the lake as if they were traveling for a meal. They didn't take the other team seriously at all. The spectators fell silent. They felt sad for team number 11 for no reason. They didn't even treat the other team as humans. Wow. At first, he heard from Kyle that the virtual space created by the combination of magic and technology could almost reach the point where the real could be mixed up with the fake. I didn't believe it at first, but now I really have nothing to say. Lucy sat on the chair, humming a tune as she skillfully barbecued the wild boar. Yutong closed her eyes and spread her consciousness outwards, covering more than half of the island. She didn't forget to remind her, Madam, the inside of the wild boar's left side is a little cooked, but the right side is still a little raw. Oh, Lucy quickly answered. She tilted the wild boar a little to the right and sprinkled a layer of chili powder. The 2 of them really looked like they were having a picnic. Only Wanda didn't let go. She held a steaming cup of black tea and sat on the chair next to her cautiously. Wanda looked at Lucy, who was immersed in the wild boar roasting like a young girl. Then she looked at Yutong, who was calm as if she had everything under control. She looked at Wanda, who was usually domineering and unrestrained. She asked weakly, is there anything I can do? Of course, there's nothing else. Lucy winked playfully and smiled. You're a guest. How can I let you do it? Guest? Wanda almost choked on the red tea in her mouth. Wasn't this a competition? Is this really a gathering? Lucy saw the strange look on Wanda's face. She smiled brightly and cut off the cooked meat on one side with a knife. She put it on a plate and handed it to Wanda. Here, have a taste first. I'll explain it to you later. Wanda nodded, took the plate, tasted the barbecue, and her beautiful eyes suddenly lit up slightly. Delicious. In this virtual space, although the wild boar was also virtual, the real taste and deliciousness could still be completely felt. Look, you look so good when you smile. Why don't you smile normally? Girls don't think about fighting and killing all day long. Enjoying the present life is the truth. Lucy looked at Wanda and smiled. You are still young. When you are older you will understand what I mean. Aren't you guys also? Wanda subconsciously opened her mouth to retort, but she swallowed her words halfway. Right. She almost forgot. Lucy and Yu Tong were both from the same generation as Kale. They were now at least 80 years old. But after interacting with them, Wanda really couldn't tell that the two next to her were over 100 years old. After all, whether it was appearance or mentality, Lucy was a little more girlish than her. Back to the previous topic. Lucy handed the plate with the barbecue to Yu Tong. She took a sip of the red tea and said to Wanda, "You must be very curious. Why don't we go directly to the opponent's base before they notice and destroy it?" Wanda nodded. Indeed, going to the opponent's base and destroying it should be the most stable way to win the competition. Then what happens after we win? Lucy suddenly asked her. After we win? Wanda was stunned for a moment. She muttered, "Continue the competition? That's boring?" Lucy shook her head and said, "You pay too much attention to the results when you do things. In fact, the process and the method are equally important. For example, now." Wanda didn't quite understand. She pointed at the barbecue pig in red tea. "This is just a part of it." Lucy smiled and said, "This is also what Kale taught me. He said that you must pay attention to the fun in your life. Otherwise, you will feel bored in the future and won't have many beautiful memories to remember." Seeing that Wanda still didn't understand, Lucy immediately gave an example. "Think about it. If we go to the opponent's base and destroy it, we will only win the competition cleanly. What's the point? We win but we won't be happy. It's boring and boring. But now we stop midway, enjoy the natural scenery, eat barbecue, drink lunch, and sit by the pleasant lake to chat. Wait a moment, then look at the opponent's shocked expression. Isn't that fun?" Speaking of this, Lucy's angelic and pure face revealed a devilish smirk. Wanda suddenly realized why Lucy still maintained the mentality of a young girl. Life is long, especially for the people of the cow country. Compared to humans, their lifespan is almost immortal. If you don't add some spice to your life, it will indeed be too boring. Thinking of this, Wanda entered the Hydra organization at the age of 10. Her tight heartstrings were finally able to relax at this moment. As if infected by Lucy's naive and interesting remarks, Wanda leaned back on the chair and tasted the red tea in the cup again. This time she tasted a faint sweetness from the bitterness. It turned out that this was life. Wanda secretly sighed in her heart. She curiously raised the cup and asked, "Then this? That and these chairs as well as the seasoning, are all item cards that I have been carrying with me." Lucy smiled and said, "These are all little things that Kale made." Wanda suddenly understood. She remembered that before, when Kale gave them the bulletproof vest, he also drew cards out of thin air. She really didn't expect that man to actually know how to make these little things. Wanda's delicate and beautiful face unnaturally blushed a little. Lucy, who saw all of this, curved her beautiful eyes like crescent moons. It would be a pity if such a beautiful and capable girl didn't enter their family. After all, they should keep the goodies within the family. Lucy didn't mind the existence of other women around Kale. She had lived for more than half a century and had explored more than half of the Milky Way alliance. Her strength and vision were no longer within the scope of the humans on Earth. Not only did she not mind, but she also secretly welcomed it. With more people around, the house would be livelier, and the days wouldn't be so dull and boring. Yu Tong, who had been resting with her eyes closed, suddenly opened her eyes. Silver light flashed in her eyes and she said softly, "Mother. The other team's 3 people are coming towards the eastern forest. They are very fast and will arrive here in about 5 seconds. That's so slow. Then let's wait for them to come." Unhurriedly, Lucy took another sip of the black tea and placed the cup on the table. Together with Walter, she looked into the depths of the forest in the east. Accompanied by rustling sounds from the dense and dark forest, 3 dark mages in cloaks rushed out. When they saw the scene by the lake and Lucy and the other 2 who looked like they were on vacation, they immediately stopped in a hurry. Under their cloaks, they must have expected to reveal a shocked expression. "Ha!" Wanda couldn't help but laugh. Her bell-like laughter floated over the virtual island. Chapter 630. As if infected by Wanda's laughter, the audience also couldn't help but laugh. Extremely happy laughter resounded in the stands. That's right. There were too many things to bear in a person's life. Because of various reasons, the pursuit of status, money, power, and due to various shackles of reality, many people's mentality was much more mature than it looked. The time when they could find new entertainment and laugh happily every day was gone forever. What are you laughing at? Cassius glared fiercely at Wanda, who was laughing. He was originally angry and he was panting from rushing over. As a result, he saw the other party leisurely drinking lunch and roasting game. Wanda's laughter at this time was incomparably dazzling in his ears, as if she was mocking him. No, nothing. Wanda waved her hand, but she was still laughing. Ahem. Lucy got up from her chair and pretended to be serious. She coughed and said, Wanda, we have to respect our opponents. Walter almost choked on his own laughter again. He rolled his eyes. You're the one who doesn't respect your opponent the most, aren't you? After talking with Lucy and the others, Wanda was no longer reserved and truly integrated into Lucy's team. Madam, I'm going to make my move. Yu Tong had unknowingly left her chair. Her eyes were shining with a sacred silver light. She walked towards Cassius's team, intending to fight the opponent's team alone. Hey, don't be in such a hurry. Lucy hurriedly stopped Yu Tong and said in a meaningful tone, both of you are so casual. This is a competition, we have to respect our opponents. Cassius and his two subordinates were silent. Look, is this something a human would say? Okay. Now let's discuss the battle plan. Lucy looked at Wanda and Yu Tong, then looked at Cassius's team and said, how about this? I'll deal with the one on the left and Yu Tong will deal with the one on the right. As for their boss, I'll leave it to you, Wanda. Okay. Yu Tong nodded. No problem, Wanda replied solemnly. This was her first battle as a member of the Cow Country's camp. She wanted to win beautifully. What kind of plan was this? Cassius had had enough. He felt that his spirit had been greatly insulted. Following his cold gaze, the men on his left and right rushed towards Lucy and the others. The two dark mages, Black 1 and Black 2, made hand seals as they sprinted forward. A void weapon that resembled a sword, a dagger, and an icicle appeared in their hands. It was similar to the elemental composition of the mirror dimension. The void weapon was translucent, and its appearance was like a broken mirror that reflected light. My mother, Miss Wanda. Don't let that weapon pierce your body. Yu Tong's silver eyes flashed as she quickly reminded Lucy and Black 1. She felt that the void weapon was mixed with the power of darkness and space. If it pierced her body in the real world might be injured. Got it? Lucy nodded solemnly. White cold air surged from her body, and the temperature of the surrounding air immediately dropped. The grass under her feet was also covered with frost at a speed visible to the naked eye. Your opponent is me. The cold air wrapped around her body like a white ribbon. Lucy didn't use a long-range ice attack. Instead, she took the initiative to rush towards Black 2. Yu Tong raised her white slender hand and pushed forward. Layers of air exploded, and Black 3, who was rushing towards her, was blasted more than 10 meters away. She moved her mind, and her body floated up and chased after Black 3, who was still flying in the air. Soon, in the middle of the grass, only Cassius and Wanda were left. Those two women are really terrible. Cassius withdrew his gaze from Lucy and Yu Tong, and coldly stared at Wanda in front of him. But I can feel that in your team you are the weakest. Too arrogant, this is the biggest mistake you have made. In the future, don't regret today. Cassius chanted a spell, and his hands grasped the air. A void weapon was formed in the air, and he held it in his hands. Then let's try. Wanda took a deep breath. She raised her hands, and a crimson fog appeared and wrapped around her slender fingertips. Outside on the watchtower. Looking at the confrontation between Cassius and Wanda on the screen, Kale smiled. The battle between the dark sorcerer and the crimson, which was really interesting. On one side was the evil power of the dark dimension, and on the other side was the chaotic power of the universe. These two energies both represented annihilation, and it was really hard to say which one was stronger. As for why Lucy arranged for Wanda to deal with Cassius, Kale didn't need to think to know that Lucy saw the potential in Wanda and wanted to use this opportunity to train her. On the large virtual island on the grass next to the lake, Black 2 held a void weapon and maintained the posture of charging forward. His appearance was frozen with a thick layer of frost. His eyes were wide open, revealing a look of fear. Obviously, he was frozen before he could react. The gap in strength between the two sides was too big. Black 2's mirror dimension, magic shield protection, soul separation, and reality manipulation, etc. Many of his spells did not even have time to be cast before he was subdued by Lucy, who had experienced hundreds of battles in the Milky Way Alliance. Lucy froze an ice thrown on top of his head. Sitting on the chair, she paid close attention to the battle on Wanda's side, ready to intervene at any time. The more she looked at Wanda, the more she liked her. If she was injured, she wouldn't be willing. On the other side, the battle between Yu Tong and Black 3 had not yet begun, but it was basically declared over. It was also a unilateral ravaging, but the ravaging here was more thorough. After Black 3's body was blown away, he cast soul separation in time. His soul was holding a void weapon and was about to stab Yu Tong, who was chasing him. As a result, Yu Tong casually slapped, and her mind formed a giant hand, and his soul was swatted to the ground like a fly. Interesting, a soul body. Yu Tong's eyes flashed silver, and formed a cage with her mind and locked Black 3's soul in it. Driven by strong curiosity, she used the mind-reading technique and immediately studied Black 3's soul body. It was no wonder that Black 2 and Black 3 couldn't last a few rounds, because Lucy and Yu Tong were too strong. Whether it was ability or combat experience, they were more than a level higher than them. In the middle of the grass, Cassius, who had no idea that his men had been wiped out, charged at Walter with his void dual blades and his cloak flapping in the wind. Wanda's right palm pushed forward, and the crimson fog condensed into a mass of energy, and violently blasted toward Cassius. Cassius's eyes were cold, and his right hand fiercely waved forward, throwing the void weapon like a spear. When the void weapon and the crimson energy came into contact, it was as if a violent chemical reaction had occurred. A terrifying shockwave of annihilation exploded, forming a blue tide that spread outwards. The grass, air, and even light that was engulfed by it were all annihilated. Chapter 631. Not even a speck of ash was left behind. After the baptism of the two extreme energies, a bare round pit was left in the middle of the grassland. Cassius did not slow down. He leaped across the round pit, and the void weapon in his hand cut through the air, quickly stabbing towards Wanda. Wanda dodged sideways, but the tip of the void weapon swept past her windbreaker, and it immediately tore a hole in it like a piece of paper. Not giving the other party a chance to continue to pursue, Wanda pushed the crimson energy away, forming layers of tides that spread out in the air. A creepy aura surged in his heart, and Cassius hurriedly stepped back, putting a certain distance between him and Wanda. The crimson energy covered the barbecue grill and chairs, and the items disintegrated into pieces at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the audience outside, the energy they casually released is comparable to a small nuclear power? The audience was stunned as they watched the extraordinary battle between the Dark Mage and the Crimson Witch. The collision of the top innate abilities and acquired spells. This battle, just visually, was not inferior to the battle between Iron Man and the Ancient One. The body can't be hit by that strange red energy. Cassius's face was solemn as he looked at the crimson energy lingering around Wanda's hand. When he came into close contact with that strange energy, it made him feel like he was facing the master of the dark dimension. It seems that I can only use the energy given by the master. Cassius suddenly threw away the void weapon in his hand. He faced Wanda, who was preparing to continue to release the crimson energy, and slowly opened his hands, making a casting gesture similar to that of the Ancient One. Could it be that this is... Not only was Wanda stunned, but Lucy and Yu Tong, who were watching the battle, were also stunned. As if confirming their speculation, on Cassius's face under the cloak, a thick black light extended to the corner of his eyes, making his already cold appearance even more ferocious and terrifying. The terrain of the island's grassland was like a Rubik's Cube. It began to change irregularly, and the grassland caved in, trying to bury Wanda alive. This was a deeper application of the mirror dimension. Even if it used the power of the dark dimension to increase its influence on the real world, the pinnacle of reality. Seeing this scene, the audience was in an uproar. In the first group match, the Ancient One used this move to block a heavyweight nuclear bomb. Many people still remembered it clearly. They didn't expect that the contestant codenamed Black One would also use this move. It seemed that times had really changed. Wanda was shocked. Before her body sank into the ground, she used the crimson energy and floated up 10 meters in the air. Be careful. Lucy's warning voice suddenly sounded. Wanda seemed to sense something and looked up at the sky. In her beautiful eyes, a huge lake was reflected. It was Cassius twisting the space and using the lake as a water plate, inverting it from top to bottom. With a splash, the water in the lake immediately poured down and covered Wanda. Open for me. At the critical moment, Wanda's hands moved quickly. The crimson energy on her body continued to grow. While covering her body, the crimson energy was released. Bang! The vast lake was like a waterfall hanging upside down in the sky, and the crimson energy was like an arrow that broke the waterfall in half. All the water in the lake washed over the grassland and instantly flooded the area within 100 meters. Cassius, who was standing on the hillside next to the grassland, didn't have time to continue transforming the space in the real world. Two beautiful figures surrounded him, one on the left and one on the right. One of them was surrounded by white cold air. She stepped on the water and the water surface froze into ice in the next moment. The other person was actually flying in the air, and the mental fluctuations coming from his body caused him to feel a slight stabbing pain in his mind. It was Lucy and Yutong. They noticed that something was wrong with Cassius. They didn't choose to watch from the sidelines. Taking advantage of the time when Cassius was gasping for breath, they attacked. Using the power of the dark dimension to increase his control of reality, Cassius already knew that Black 2 and Black 3 had been defeated. He scolded "too useless trash" in his heart. Facing Lucy and Black 3 who were besieging him, he could only helplessly raise his hands. "I admit defeat." Yutong stopped immediately and hovered beside Cassius. Lucy, on the other hand, didn't slow down at all. She leaped high into the air and kicked Cassius in the face with her left leg in a beautiful arc. The white, frozen air emanating from her body instantly froze Cassius' head. Under the force of her kick, Cassius' neck broke with a crack, and the crystallized head flew high into the air, falling into the swamp below. If admitting defeat was useful, why would there be a referee? Lucy snorted and retracted her left foot. She muttered, "Who asked you to bully my little sister?" "Mother, look." Yutong gestured for Lucy to look at the sky above the grassland. After all the water in the lake fell, Wanda was still floating in the air. Her pale face was covered in sweat. Her hands were hanging down weakly. Her towering chest was heaving up and down as she gasped for breath. She slowly descended to the hillside. She had barely managed to block that move. "Great." Lucy was overjoyed. She hugged Wanda, who had just landed, and rubbed her face against hers. This way everyone wins. Wanda didn't reject it. This feeling of being cared for wasn't bad. Cassius's team was defeated. The system determined that Lucy's team was the winner. The three of them left the virtual island and returned to the arena. While the audience cheered and applauded, they secretly warned themselves not to provoke the women of the cow country. Otherwise they wouldn't even know how they died. In their opinion, it wasn't that Cassius was too weak. It was that Lucy and her team were too strong. They were so strong that they weren't even on the same level. After 2 wonderful group matches, the audience was a little tired. These matches were too impactful on the body and mind. Their perception and worldview could collapse and rebuild at any time because of a battle. Who could withstand this? But no matter what, the third group match began as scheduled. The main god system popped up on the screen and publicly selected the third group match. Soon the lineup for the third match was set. Blue team number 2 consisted of Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Falcon. Team number 7, Red Team. The members are Black Widow, Illusion, and Quicksilver. Seeing the third group match, even Kale couldn't help but laugh. They were all acquaintances of the Avengers. This match, to some extent, was a real civil war between heroes. "Captain, be gentle later. Put down the water for us." Black Widow winked at Captain America and teased him. "Your side is the one." Captain America smiled bitterly. Black Widow had Vision and Quicksilver. After communicating with each other, the 6 of them collectively disappeared from the arena. The third group match officially began. Chapter 632. Captain America Steve and Black Widow Natasha, each leading a team of 3, disappeared from the duel field and appeared in an open airport with a Boeing plane. The 6 of them faced each other, staring at each other, not knowing what to say. At this moment, a series of system captions appeared above everyone's vision. Random battle scene, New York private airport. The time limit is 10 minutes, and the contestants cannot leave the airport area. Within 10 minutes, whichever team defeats the most members of the other team wins. It was not the previous large-scale map in base mode, but a direct battle in a small map. This rule was much simpler and more brutal than before. In the central hall of the watchtower, Kale saw this scene and could not help but laugh. Since it was a battle between heroes, it would not be perfect if it was not matched with an airport. However, this rule was extremely disadvantageous for the American team and the blue team. After all, in terms of raw strength, the Black Widow team and the Red team were much stronger. Not to mention Winter Soldier and Falcon, both of them belonged to the human category. Their physiques were not much stronger than ordinary people. They only used mechanical prosthetics or wings, coupled with superb fighting skills. Only Captain America seemed to be a little superhuman. On the other side, the weakest Black Widow had been genetically modified by a super agent. Quicksilver was a super with extremely fast speed. Illusion was a real superhuman synthesized by the vibranium body, the vice system, and the mind gem. In terms of strength, there was really no way to win. However, this was a battle between heroes after all. It was hard to say if the Black Widow team would go easy on them. In the virtual space, on the open space of the private airport, Captain America, dressed in a uniform and holding a shield, stood in the middle. Beside him was Winter Soldier, who had a mechanical left arm, and Falcon, who was wearing red goggles and carrying a mechanical wing retractable backpack. 10 meters away, Black Widow, who was wearing a tight black combat suit, had sexy dark blonde curls draped over her shoulders. On her left and right were Quicksilver, who was dressed in a punk style, and Illusion, who was wearing a golden cape. The superhero members who usually fought side by side were now on two different sides. When they faced each other, the atmosphere was slightly strange. "Captain, I didn't expect to have to fight you one day." Black Widow blinked her beautiful eyes and teased softly. "You really don't need to go easy on us?" "No need. So many people are watching. You will suffer if you underestimate us. We can fight like this for a day and a night." Captain America shook his head and wore the round shield on his left hand. Dong Bing raised his mechanical left hand and took out an old AK rifle from his back with his right hand. Falcon opened his backpack, stretched out a pair of steel wings, and released a small aircraft that was attached to his shoulder. The three of them were ready to fight. They were all retired veterans. No matter what kind of enemy they faced, they dared to give it their all in a fight. Perhaps it was the fate of soldiers to fall on the battlefield. "Very well, since that's the case, we won't stand on ceremony." Black Widow nodded to Quicksilver, signaling him to get ready for battle, and said to Illusion on the side, "Illusion, you fly into the sky first and observe the battle situation. If necessary, I will let you assist us." Letting Illusion cause an uproar at the start of the match was too unsolvable, so they might as well use him as their trump card. "No problem." Illusion nodded and ascended. Soon he was 100 meters above the airport. His desire to win this battle was not high. This time he also came to make up the numbers. Black Widow's instructions were just what he wanted. "Then let's start." Black Widow suddenly waved her arm, and in the next moment, Quicksilver next to her disappeared. "He's here." Before Captain America finished speaking, Dong Bing, who was raising the rifle in his hand, seemed to be hit by an invisible figure and flew out with his gun. Too fast. For the first time, Falcon could only choose to protect himself. As the wing engine braked, he flew directly into the air. Quicksilver's movement speed is fast, exceeding the limit that human dynamic vision can capture, but the only drawback is that he can't attack enemies in the air. It has to be said. The Marvel world has greatly weakened Quicksilver in this world. Compared with the Quicksilver in the X-Men world, his talent is like a 1-star beginner, and the other is a 3-star beginner. But Quicksilver is still Quicksilver after all, even if it's a weakened version. In the next 5 seconds, Captain America and Dong Bing, two friends, were like badminton, constantly being hit by an invisible racket, keeping them floating at a low altitude and never falling to the ground again. Quicksilver's figure couldn't be seen clearly as he continued to punch, surrounding the two and turning them back and forth. Finally, Falcon released a small rocket launcher in the air and bombarded the open space between Captain America and Dong Bing, forcing Quicksilver to avoid and stop. Captain America and Dong Bing fell to the ground with delay. "Just now, I was beaten by that kid at least 20 times. Dong Bing got up from the ground with difficulty. He looked at the ground and found that the rifle had been dismantled into countless parts, and all the bullets in the magazine were scattered on the ground. "I've probably hit him 30 times. That kid really doesn't hold back." Captain America groaned. His ability to resist hits was stacked to the maximum. He got up from the ground as if nothing had happened. "Cover your mouth and nose, Captain." Falcon released smoke bombs from the air, and white smoke filled the square, quickly enveloping the figures of Captain America and Dong Bing. Outside the smoke area, Quicksilver suddenly appeared. He looked at the two people who disappeared and said, "Good plan, don't think that this can stop me." Wearing the goggles on his neck and covering his mouth and nose with a scarf, Quicksilver disappeared again and turned into a strong wind rushing into the smoke. Inside the smoke-shrouded area. "We can't stay here. Although our vision is blocked, which has a certain hindrance to the kid's actions, his speed is too fast. We have no power to fight back. We must limit his actions." Captain America covered his mouth and nose and whispered to Dong Bing next to him. "What should we do?" Dong Bing narrowed his eyes and looked around cautiously. We can't fight in this open space. Go to a place with relatively narrow space. By the way, go to the airport building next to it. Under the cover of the smoke, Captain America took Winter Soldier and rushed to the airport building according to his memory. Less than 10 meters in the smoke in front of them suddenly broke and a vigorous black figure jumped out and kicked towards Captain America's face. Captain America reacted very quickly and raised his round shield to block the kick. The black figure landed lightly and shook her sexy curly hair. It was Black Widow from the enemy team. Captain, you want to go to the airport building? I've already guessed it. You don't think I will let you go easily? Looking at Captain America, Black Widow was like a blooming black rose in the white smoke, with a seductive and dangerous aura. Chapter 633. The open space of the airport was shrouded in smoke from the smoke bombs. Even the audience on the Skynet platform couldn't see what was going on in the smoke area. Falcon was still flying around the airport at a low altitude. According to the instructions conveyed by Captain America, he continued to drop smoke bombs and use smoke to cover the open space of the airport and the area leading to the airport building. Inside the smoke area, there were faint sounds of Captain America, Winter Soldier, Black Widow, and Quicksilver fighting. However, one side's ability to resist was too strong, and the other side relied on their agility to seize the initiative. It was obviously difficult to determine the winner and the loser. Hundreds of meters above the airport, Phantom stood suspended in the air. The golden cloak behind him swayed with the wind, and his attention did not fall on the battle below. The audience and the spectator stands outside looked at the projection screen and felt a little sleepy. Compared with the previous two wonderful and fierce games, this civil war was like a friendly performance. Some people were throwing the game and some people were covered by smoke. It was impossible to see the situation inside. In the main hall of the watchtower, Kale yawned sleepily and sat back in the chair. Sakuragi, who was wearing a kimono, came and sat in his arms. She sent peeled grapes and fragrant lips into his mouth. Only Logan was still paying attention to the game. The game time passed minute by minute, and half of the time had passed. He couldn't help but ponder. Boss, they won't fight to a draw. If Phantom doesn't join the battle, it's really possible. Kale shrugged. Quicksilver's superpower suppression is still there. If it's an ordinary person, even 100 of them can't beat him. However, he encountered Captain America who had a 50% chance of winning. He was famous for his resistance in history. As for Dong Bing, he was a well-tempered war machine. Quicksilver can infinitely suppress Captain America, but he can't really threaten them. Even with Black Widow, these four people are estimated to fight like this all day. Falcon wanted to participate in the battle, but unfortunately he couldn't land. Once he approached the smoke area, his mechanical wings would be removed by Quicksilver, so he could only assist in the air. To sum it up simply in one sentence, the members of this civil war were all too familiar with each other, and their desire to win wasn't strong enough, which made it look so dull and boring. It was a civil war with no viewing value. I'll take a rest first. Wake me up when the competition is over. Kale hugged Sakuragi's soft body and closed his eyes to rest. Lying on the chair, he entered a semi-dormant state. However, in less than 2 minutes, Logan suddenly woke him up. Kale opened his eyes in surprise and found that Logan's face was pale. He pointed at the screen and said in a hoarse voice, "Boss, look, what are you looking at? Is the match over?" Kale raised his eyes and looked at the screen. The next moment, even he was stunned. In the virtual airport, half of the wreckage of a large Boeing plane was lying next to the airport building. The ruins of the building and the wreckage of the plane were covered with flames. Thick black smoke was billowing. At first glance, the airport was like a burning ground baptized by a fierce battle. Half of the vibrating gold round shield was buried in the broken wall and the broken mechanical arm was flashing with electric light. Captain America and Winter Soldier fell in a pool of blood. Their chests were penetrated with burning wounds, and the remaining half of their bodies had lost their vitality. One of Falcon's mechanical wings was missing, and the other was nailed to the outer wall of the broken building, like a dead bird hanging on an iron net. Quicksilver and Black Widow were not much better. The two fell next to the ruins of the building. They were also seriously injured. Their bodies curled up into a ball and died. Their gray eyes remained wide open, mixed with an incredible look. Over the airport burning with red flames, Gincher's face was calm. The yellow gem on his forehead flashed, and the golden cloak behind him fluttered. He was like an indifferent death god overlooking the 5 corpses. What the hell is going on? Kale took a deep breath. He was no longer sleepy. Even if this was only staged in a virtual space, the impact of this scene was still too great. It made people's scalp tingle. I don't know. Logan shook his head and said solemnly, half a minute ago, Captain America and Winter Soldier broke through Black Widow's defense and entered the airport building to limit Quicksilver's super speed. With Falcon's assistance in the sky, Captain America and Winter Soldier began to suppress Quicksilver and Black Widow instead. At this moment, Genscher suddenly made his move. He first nailed Falcon to the wall of the building, then lifted the Boeing plane and smashed it into the airport building. When Captain America and the other three took refuge, Genscher used an energy laser to kill everyone, including his two teammates. Logan's voice trembled a little. The scene of Genscher's sudden attack was really scary. He was like a mechanical death god. What's going on? Cale frowned. Just listening to Logan's retelling made him feel incredulous. Genscher would kill his own people in the Avengers. This was completely illogical. Although Genscher had extremely strong abilities, he did not like to fight. Among the Avengers, he was the most independent and rational hero. But the bodies of Captain America and the other four were still lying on the ground, proving that this was an ironclad fact. Captain America's blue team was wiped out, and Genscher was the only one left in Black Widow's red team. The main god system judged that the red team won, and the third round of the competition ended. However, only Genscher returned to the duel field. Black Widow and Quicksilver chose to withdraw from the subsequent superpower competition. This was normal. After all, they could not accept the sudden betrayal of their companions. No one in the audience applauded or cheered. Even the contestants took a few steps back and stayed away from Genscher. Everyone looked at him in horror. After a few seconds of silence, Logan turned around and asked Cale, "Boss, is the superpower competition going to continue?" "Of course. Why not?" Kyle looked at the illusion standing in the middle of the arena. At that moment, many thoughts flashed through his mind. He thought that perhaps this was the illusion system's tendency towards advanced creation. He thought that perhaps a third party had used a mysterious ability to induce the illusion. He thought that perhaps it was the Essence Stone's doing. He also thought that perhaps it was the illusion's own decision. Since these guesses were all possible, he just needed to continue the competition and observe Genscher's behavior. It was fun to fight with the air. Under his eyes, no matter what the problem was, it would be exposed sooner or later. Genscher's strange behavior made this superpower competition more and more interesting. Chapter 634. After the interlude of Illusion's rampage, the superpower competition continued according to Cale's instructions. After the first 3 group matches, the remaining contestants were very clear that although this was just a competition, it was not a joke. No one knew what kind of opponent they would face. Those who could participate in the group matches were not normal humans. The main god system displayed the screen turntable and began the drawing of the 4th round. The 4th round, blue team is number 5. The large cluster of lights on the duel arena fell on the 3 people led by the poison agent, Ant-Man and Deadpool. Finally, is it our turn? Ant-Man Scott took a deep breath and looked at the other teams that had not yet played. He could feel an invisible pressure. Normal. Think about it, a team like Iron Man was eliminated. Isn't it normal for us to be eliminated? Deadpool spread his hands and comforted. Are you comforting people? Ant-Man glanced at him unhappily. The poison agent did not speak. His narrow white eyes stared at the screen, which was drawing the red team they were up against. The 4th round, red team is number 10. The contestants and the audience suddenly exclaimed. Their eyes fell on a 3 to 4 meter tall axe-wielding giant whose body was burning with green flames. Next to it stood 2 K2s dressed in black tights and devil masks. This is bad. The poison agent's pupils contracted. He clenched his dark fists and said in a low and hoarse voice, "We met the team that we should not have met the most among the remaining teams. Those people are all from the cow country. They should be your acquaintances. Is that giant with green flames very powerful?" Ant-Man looked at Team 10 cautiously and turned back to ask the poison agent. The poison agent said seriously, "That is Hellfire, the gatekeeper of the cow country. It is the ultimate combat monster created by the Master. Its strength is not ordinary. I can only say that its combat power is higher than illusion." That exaggerated? Ant-Man was frightened. Even Deadpool withdrew his sloppy attitude. The 2 of them tensed up their bodies and minds. Next, it would be a tough battle. Without waiting for the poison agent's team to discuss more, The game began and the 6 people in the 4th round disappeared from the duel field. The scene above the arena changed, switching to a courtyard with a fountain filled with birds chirping and fragrant flowers. The courtyard was surrounded by a boundless field of gorgeous flowers. Random battle scene, Planet Igo's Fountain Park. The time limit is 10 minutes. Participants are not allowed to leave the airport area. Within 10 minutes, the team that defeated the most members of the other team would win. Blue team contestants, Poison Agent, Ant-Man and Deadpool. Red team contestants, Hellfire, Wrath Carl, Pride Carl. 3 people in a team. The 6 of them stared at each other across the exquisite fountain. These evil men did not fit in with the dreamlike scenery of the flower fields around them. Among them, the Hellfire was the most eye-catching. Its tall and sturdy body was wrapped in iron chains, and its body was covered in a cold green flame. It held a huge broken one-handed axe in its hand, and just by standing there, it gave off a strong pressure. The flowers and plants under its feet had already been burned to ashes. Even the 2 elite members of the team didn't dare to get too close to the Hellfire. If the Hellfire was annoyed, it wouldn't care about its teammates. In the world, there was nothing else that could make it cower in fear except for Kale. There's no other way. I'll stop the Hellfire. You guys go deal with the K2s. The Poison Agent took a step forward. Under the power of the poison in his body suddenly swelled, and the dark matter formed strong muscles. The Poison Agent roared violently, his fangs opened and his scarlet tongue spat out. His whole body completely transformed into a dark black monster. The Hellfire's hollow eyes lit up with flames and rushed directly toward the Poison Agent. The dark fist against the green flame fist. The moment the fists touched, the powerful and terrifying air pressure shook the air and swept outward, sending Ant-Man, Deadpool, Gluttony and Pride flying. Bang, bang, bang. When the 4 of them looked inside the garden, they saw that the fountain in the center had already collapsed into ruins. The 2 monsters were entangled in it, and the close game alone made the park begin to collapse. Monsters, those 2 are really monsters. I'm afraid I'll be smashed into meat paste. Deadpool was stunned. According to the Poison Agent, it's estimated that he can't hold on for 10 minutes. He can only rely on us. If we can defeat the other 2, maybe we can win this game. Ant-Man got up from the ground and looked at the 2 K2s not far away. If you want to defeat us, then come and try. Pride raised his chin and snorted coldly. You think we're soft eggplants? I'm angry. The veins on Fury's forehead bulged as she rushed toward Ant-Man. There's something wrong with those 2 people. There's an ominous aura on them. Deadpool looked at Fury rushing toward them. He grabbed back with both hands and pulled out 2 samurai swords made of sodium carbon steel. Try it and you'll know. Ant-Man took out an object from his pocket and threw it at Fury as a weapon. Fury's eyes widened, and what she saw was a toy car that was less than the size of a thumb. Are you kidding me? Fury was really angry this time, but in the blink of an eye, the toy car that was thrown over magically continued to expand and quickly recovered into a huge transport vehicle. It smashed Fury from top to bottom and smashed her into the flower field. Well done. Deadpool, who had just held the sword in both hands, looked at Ant-Man with a little surprise. I didn't expect you to know magic. This is not magic, it's a cross-century science, Pym's technology. Ant-Man corrected him coolly as if Pym's technology was developed by him. He looked at Pride, who was standing in place, and persuaded, now your team has lost 1 member. If you know what's good for you, surrender early. What are you talking about, lowly bug? Pride laughed and pointed to the bottom of the transport vehicle. You don't think it's so easy to solve Fury, do you? What? Ant-Man and Deadpool were stunned. Only then did they realize that the transport vehicle was constantly trembling, and then it was lifted up inch by inch. Under the transport vehicle, Fury's figure appeared. She held the wheel with both hands and moved the transport vehicle that weighed several tons on her body away with her strength alone. What the hell is that? Ant-Man stretched out his hand and pointed behind Fury. When Fury was angry, a translucent monster shadow faintly appeared behind him. It's one of the 7 deadly sins, Fury, evil spirit. Pride explained proudly, that's the power given by the Patriarch. It can greatly enhance the physique and obtain magical talent abilities. Of course. I have one too. Mine is evil spirit Pride. When Pride said this, an evil shadow of a monster also appeared on his body. The 7 deadly sins evil spirit was drawn by Kale when he was in the Milky Way Alliance. After returning to Earth, he didn't need these parasitic enhancements, so he gave them to the members of K2 who performed well. Chapter 635. Fury, his talent ability is, the angrier he is, the stronger his physique will be. There is no doubt that you have angered him now. Hottie's voice changed subtly from a neutral voice to a female voice, and she stood with her chest puffed up a little. Deadpool and Ant-Man knew that the other party turned out to be a woman. It's not their fault. After all, Kata wears the same combat uniform and the standard demon mask, and sometimes uses a voice changer to speak, so it's normal to not be able to distinguish between men and women in a short time. It's a pity it turned out to be an airport. Deadpool couldn't help but say something, and Ant-Man nodded in agreement, and the two had the same tacit understanding on this point. What are you talking about? Hottie's tone became extremely cold, and before she could do anything with a low roar, the transport vehicle was thrown high and violently smashed towards Deadpool and Ant-Man. I'll give it back to you. Looking at the transport vehicle getting closer and closer, the shadow had covered his body, and Deadpool looked sideways at Ant-Man and urged, "Hey, hurry up and change it back to a small toy car." "Sorry. I can't do it, that was a one-time enlargement device." "Then why are you still standing there, waiting to be crushed into a meat patty?" Deadpool and Ant-Man seemed to have a delay, and they were half a beat slower, and they fell to the left and right respectively, narrowly avoiding the transport vehicle. The large vehicle smashed into the flower field, flipped a few times and exploded at a low altitude, and countless flowers and soil splashed out. The flower field next to it directly turned into half a sea of fire. That was close. Deadpool kept rolling, holding the samurai's double swords, and rolled up from the ground. Perceiving the sound of the wind coming from his ears, he quickly leaned back to dodge, and a fist brushed past his chest. It was Fury. At this time, the mask on Fury's face was long gone, and his rough face was full of anger. The blue veins on his forehead bulged like a dragon snake, and his muscles bulged the black tight suit. His fists carried a strong wind pressure, and those who were hit must be either dead or injured. While Deadpool leaned back to avoid the punch, his hand movements were not idle, and a samurai sword slashed towards Fury's neck. Fury had no intention of avoiding, but continued to attack, and his thick hands hugged Deadpool. Crack. Deadpool's knife slashed on Fury's neck as if it was slashing on hard metal. It only broke the skin slightly, but it couldn't go any deeper. It was far from the separation of the human head that Deadpool imagined. How is this possible? Deadpool's eyes widened, and then his body, like a baby, was hugged tightly by Fury. My physique is now the same as my strength. It's been strengthened to an unprecedented level. With just your slash, it's impossible for you to break through my defense. Fury was angry while looking at Deadpool nearby with a smile. Now, you can't run away. Deadpool looked at him angrily. Do you think I'm surprised that I can't cut your neck? I'm just surprised that a monster like you actually has the weakness of being a man. Fury was stunned. He lowered his head and looked at his crotch. He could see that Deadpool's other knife was inserted into his crotch. This? The male spectators outside felt a chill in their lower bodies and subconsciously clamped their legs together. In the main hall of the watchtower. On the surface, it's cheap and insidious. In fact, that's the only way for mortals to fight against superhumans. Think about it more and do whatever it takes. Kale smiled, pointed to Deadpool on the projection screen, and asked curiously, "That guy, where did he come from? Patriarch, weren't you the one who created him?" Logan asked in return. Is there such a thing? Kale was stunned. Logan nodded and said, I also heard it from the family before. A few years ago, when you put some supplies in the family warehouse, you put a box with a human head in it. There was an old apprentice who used his points to exchange for that box. It seems that there is such a thing. Kale's eyes turned. A lot of things have happened in the past 10 years, and the things drawn in the card space are also very different. Among them there seems to be the head of Deadpool. He didn't expect him to recover and completely repair his body. Logan continued, the old apprentice took the box to Nissan and recently reported that a person was born in the box, called Deadpool, and he also applied to let him return to the cow country. Interesting. Kale nodded lightly and his eyes showed a deep meaning. He had speculated long ago that the items or creatures drawn from the sacrificial draw card were likely to come from other dimensions. The existence of Deadpool undoubtedly verified this point of view. That is to say, the system function of the sacrificial draw card may have an inexplicable connection with other dimensions. This point has yet to be verified. Kale turned his gaze back to the projection screen. In the virtual Igo Planet Park. You bastard, die. Rage's anger had reached its limit. His face was ferocious, and the arm holding Deadpool suddenly exerted force. Under the creepy cracking sound, the bones of Deadpool's arm and waist collapsed and shattered. Bright red blood flowed through Deadpool's uniform and fell on the flower field from top to bottom. It wasn't until Deadpool's body collapsed into a mass of meat paste in Rage's arms, his head was tilted weakly, and he couldn't be more dead. Rage threw Deadpool's soft body aside. He knelt on the ground and didn't make a sound. He reached out and pulled out the katana in his trouser pocket. Crimson blood also dripped down from his feet. Rage, you take a break first, I will take care of that little bug. Pride walked past Rage and scanned the vast flower field. After the Ant-Man's body became smaller, no one knew where he was hiding. Come out. Pride shouted, but no one responded. It would be strange if I came out. In the flower field 10 meters away from Pride and others, the flowers were used as forest cover, and the miniaturized Ant-Man hid behind, cautiously looking at Pride and the injured Rage as well as the corpse of Deadpool that was placed aside. Brother, I'm sorry. Just now, I really couldn't save you. The Ant-Man sighed softly, thinking about how to bypass Pride and solve the problem of Rage's injured lower body. You don't want to come out, do you? Pride suddenly snorted coldly. She bent down and put her hand on the flower field. Since you are here, then don't come out. If you hide here, do you think you can overturn the entire flower field? The Ant-Man scoffed at this, but to be cautious, he climbed up the flower core to see what Pride wanted to do. Then he saw it. After Pride put her palm on the flower field, the evil spirit appeared behind her, and then the flowers and plants covered by her palm began to petrify. Yes, it was petrification. As the mysterious force spread outward, the flower field began to petrify at an extremely fast speed and spread to the Ant-Man's hiding place. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.